All right, welcome to the show, Fifth Street Sports, here on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network, SB Nation Radio. I'm Nick Geber. He's Nolan, Dalla. He's Frank Perez, not Lopez. I did hear you begging for your life for Tony Montana, though. Yeah. And on the guest line, on the digital box of wonders, we have the always entertaining Brian Allen. It is great to be with you this Saturday as we put another week's show under the belt, so to speak. We got a lot to get to today, though. We're going to be joined by BetAnySports.eu analyst Charles Jay is going to be joining us, talking a little NFL draft. It's the last day today. We're going to talk Kentucky Derby. We're going to talk baseball. We're going to talk NFL football. We're going to talk a little Vegas value. We're going to talk about Pete Rose. There's so much stuff to get to today.
Other than that, nothing else is going on.
Nah, it's a really boring, slow day other than that, guys. We are going to put it up there, facebook.com /Fifth Street Sports Talk, or you can find us at Twitter at Fifth Street Sports, or you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com /Fifth Street Sports. You're kind of getting the Fifth Street Sports.
I think so, and all the men and women in uniform.
Yeah, and thank you, Nolan.
Yes.
Big hello to our men and women in uniform around the world listening on American Forces Radio. It is great to be with you. We're really everywhere. iHeartRadio, TuneIn. You know, if you are plunging your toilet, for example, and you're feeling vibrations through we're in there as well. We're everywhere. We're everywhere.
Well, some of us belong in there.
Our minds are permanently in there, right?
Absolutely.
Right, Frank?
Yeah.
Okay, so lots and lots to get to today, and we will. We certainly have a jam-packed show. A little bit of show housekeeping. We're going to do 2 hours here on the Sports Byline USA SB Nation Radio. Then we'll be flipping over to the internet. If you'd like to get the unhinged, the no holds barred version, we'll be getting there all coming up here on the show. All right, we're going to step aside. We can take a break. Once again, facebook.com /Fifth Street Sports Talk. Don't forget that. And of course, Twitter. I say of course, but you know. By the way, Twitter is Fifth Street Sport. Quickly, Nolan, what are you drinking today? What's
today,
that?
Fonterra it's a free giveaway. You know how much money this wine cost me?
What?
I think it's $8 a bottle. It cost me $800.
Yeah, $800.
That's what I lost at the slots to get the...
Oh, is that Red Rock?
Yes, indeed.
All right, we're going to step aside.
I saw you there. You were in the next machine.
Yeah, step aside, take a break. Be right back after this. Fifth Street Sports, Sports Byline USA, SB Nation Radio, Nick Geber, Nolan, Dalla, Frank Perez, and Brian, Oklahoma Brian, in the Magic Miracle Technology box joins us. And if you're listening to us on the radio and you're not watching us, it's not going to make any sense. So if you'd like to watch us, you can go to youtube.com/Fifth Street Sports and check us out. So, guys, some sad news here in Vegas, actually, recently. Dave Malinsky, who was a very well-known handicapper, not just here, like around the whole the nation, went for a hike at his beloved Mount Charleston and never came back.
Yeah. Frank, did you know Dave?
No, not much of it. I think Brian knew a lot more of his stuff than I did. I mean, I've heard of him. I heard he was a super guy, great writer. But Brian is the one that first mentioned it to me, so he had a better...
Yeah, perhaps we can bring Brian on, but let me give you a quick Dave story. And for people who are listening, you may not have heard this name, Dave Malinsky. Dave is one of these old line handicappers. Yeah, I think he was in his 60s when he passed away last week. And as you say, Nick, he was hiking in his spare time by himself. And we're blessed here in Las Vegas. You can go to the Red Rock Canyon and hike. And he went up and, he apparently had a heart attack or fell and his body was discovered later. But Dave was one of the guys who was in a business that's not always above board and not always full of integrity. Dave was one of those guys that always had integrity, always told you what he thought. He never hyped himself. He was never one of these screamers and guys that hits 80%. Always above board, always honest. I think Brian, you knew him probably better than any of us. Do you have any thoughts, Brian? Are you there?
Oh dear! Now we don't have any sound from Brian. Or do we?
Well, we'll work on that. Okay, real quick on Dave though. Let me tell you where I first met him back in 2002. I had moved to Las Vegas, and if you remember, there was a show at the Stardust, and that was
where his handicapping show was out of the.
It was out of there, and that was the show that everybody connected to sports gambling. I mean, that's where the line mover. That's where everything began. And everybody that was in that room on Sunday night and then for the show later in the week, Dave was one of those people that everybody listened to. The room would go silent when Dave gave an opinion on a game because he wasn't full of, he always told you what he thought. And again, he had losing years, he had losing seasons just like everybody else, but he was always honest. And boy, in a field that doesn't always have that. That's why I think he stood out, and he'll be remembered for that.
Was that when Sonny Reason and them were running the hole in the wall there at the Castaways? Remember that GL Vito at night too? It was. He used to come out with his predictions, but that was the hole in the wall at the Castaways. Wasn't that at the Castaways?
Yeah, that goes back a long time into the 80s and back to, you're right. Yeah. And Dave's been a part of this scene for again, 30, 35 years. And we will be missed by all those who knew him and even those who didn't.
Well, I was going to use a biblical comparison. It's a shame for a guy that's sort of been at the forefront of sports betting as a handicapper, as a man of great knowledge that people look to. Just as we're at the cusp of getting legalized sports betting, he couldn't lead his people over the mountain.
Right.
How's that?
So, and the mountain is also a bad comparison. But I'm sorry about that. All right. Well, we have Brian.
We
do have Brian
now.
back. So let's
Brian,
bring Brian
you've been
back
listening
in.
to us.
Ah, there he is.
Hey guys.
The miracle of modern science.
So I didn't actually know Dave, but I was a huge fan and read his articles every day. I'd always hoped to have a chance to meet him in person. But I'll tell you one thing about Dave over the last few years. When he would publish he wrote an article every day that he would publish around.
Oh, man. We have a really bad connection with Brian. So let's deal with that. We'll deal with that during the break and bring Brian
we're going to work
in.
on that, but let me go to the next thing, the Las Vegas Golden Knights. We'll turn to something that's a little more positive.
That's very sad. So anyway, before we do, it's very sad about Dave and thoughts with his family and
for
friends
sure, absolutely. And
all
those who
lost a legend.
We sure did.
Lost a legend.
And a new legend's being made as we speak, and that's the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the hockey team. Who
Great
would have
segue.
thought hockey in the desert? They're in round 2. This is now the Stanley Cup favorite in the Western Conference. And by the way, here's why I bring that up.
Yeah.
We're talking about news here. This is the first segment news. Have you seen what the tickets are going for at T-Mobile Center for round 2 for the Las Vegas Golden Knights playoff games?
No.
But by the way, the answer to your question that I just asked is I'm talking about front row ice, right there next to the glass, $4,300 on StubHub.
Whoa.
And by the way, that is apparently the highest price ever for a round. Stanley Cup games may get that. But for round 2, the highest in history.
Well, guys, I mean, I had heard that, one of the things we talked about last week on the show was how sort of skewed up the odds have become on the Golden Knights here in Las Vegas because, it's one of the only places that you can bet on sports here in the U.S. legally as of today at a casino.
That may change soon.
Yeah, that'll change soon. But as a result, lots of people come into town or locals that bet on the Golden Knights early. Back when the expansion team first started. I'll put $100 on them to win the Stanley Cup. There's a flyer, right? Well, all of a sudden, the odds just have gone crazy now that they're essentially one of the favorites here. There was an article that I read that said if the Golden Knights win, they stand to bankrupt a couple of the sports books.
I mean, there's been that much money about to bet.
That much action on them, yeah.
Yeah, because when they went off, they were 100 to 1 or 70 to 1 or something.
They were 200 to 1.
Was it that high?
Then it dropped to 100, yeah.
Oh.
Well, I mean, it was an expansion team, 200 to 1. Now, boy, I tell you what, they were 4 to 1 before they started the series with San Jose, which I thought was ridiculous. It should have been 10 to 1. And then they come right out and win 7-0. So maybe they're going to make me look real stupid here if they keep going.
Hey, so just to get off that topic for a minute, I saw Beatles Love this last week. My sister was in town.
By the way, it was the revamped one. They've
the
changed
revamped
the show.
Beatles Love.
How was it?
I sort of actually preferred the original one just a little bit better. Mm-hmm. It was a bit more psychedelic, but Beatles Love is like listening to Beatles in your room with a headset on after you took a copious amount of acid. Okay, so it's like a Beatles trip without the actual acid. But I mean, it is wild. It is bizarre. It is psychedelic. It is wonderful. If you like the Beatles, you'll love it. It's crazy. It's fantastic. Some of the Cirque du Soleil shows I like, but they get boring for me a little bit during the show. I mean, I saw Mystère, which is a great show. Don't get me wrong, but it's a little too weird for me sometimes. At times, they don't have a language. They talk like the Japanese women's curling team, and anyway, the weird sort of new age music, and it was a little weird. But this one's right on the mark. I loved it. It was a great time. But it was not a cheap ticket. Luckily, I got the locals rate for it, which is less expensive. But I mean, if I were a tourist coming into town and I'm paying $30 a night resort fee and I'm paying $15 a day to park and I'm paying whatever that's at the Mirage, I'm paying whatever the Mirage's room rates are, and they're not cheap, okay? I start to wonder, where's the value? And I know we're running out of time here already in this segment, which is a terrible thing. We'll probably take this into the next segment. But, I asked the question, where's the value? Because I went on my girlfriend booked a staycation last year.
Staycation.
A staycation. We all live here in Las Vegas. At the Luxor, which is, a dump. Let's just say what it is. Luxor's kind of a dump. Okay. But she booked a staycation at the Luxor. It was the worst experience ever. It cost $10 to park or $15 to park. You go in, there's a line. There's a line to drop your bags off. There's a line to check in. Then you go to the restaurant. There's a line at the restaurant. Then everyone wanted to go to the pool. Well, yeah, but we got to the pool 20 minutes after it opened, and the pool was already full. So you then had to pay $20 for the VIP pool. It's just, where's the value? At some point, all of this tourist infrastructure that's being built, whether it's the Raiders Stadium, whether it's all of these other pieces that are getting built on top of tourists and resort fees here in Las Vegas, are going to take the value out of Las Vegas. And I know that's kind of loaded, guys, but we are out. This segment is now up, and I apologize to everyone for taking the mic here. We do have Brian back. But that's my thought. I'd love to get you guys' take when we come back, and then we can go to betting values, because that's something that's really important to talk about.
And you're gonna hear from Brian eventually.
Yeah, we'll get there.
All right.
This is Fifth Street Sports. We'll be back. Hey, Brian.
Hey.
All right. We are back here on Fifth Street Sports, Sports Byline USA, SB Nation Radio, American Forces. Big hello to our men and women in uniform listening on the American Forces Network. I'm Nick Geber. He's Nolan Dalla, Frank Perez, and of course, we do have Oklahoma Brian. We hope, one more time, Oklahoma Brian, all the way from, well, Oklahoma. You with us, Brian?
I'm here, guys. How is that? Any better?
Oh, terrific. You sound lovely and clear. Like if I could use an expression from a Clock of Courage, like an unmuddied lake. Okay, fantastic. A little bit of the old ultra-violence. Okay, guys, before the break, I was talking about my experience at my staycation at the Luxor last year. And talking, as I drive, and what a bad experience it was. And a bad experience because the hotel was average, the food was it was okay, it was bloody expensive, not because the room rate wasn't a great teaser rate of $50 a night or whatever it was, because by the time you lump in a $30 fee, resort fee, and then parking for 10 or $15, and then you have the special pool thing because the other pool got filled with punters by the time it opened, and then it's crazy, right? It's a massive sea of humanity. And then you wait in line for this, and you wait in line for the food, and you wait in line at the Starbucks, and you wait in line here. And it's just, where is the value? And as I go up and down the strip, and, there's two types of people here in Las Vegas. You guys know this. There's high rollers, and then there's high strollers. Those are the high strollers, folks. I mean, those are the guys walking up and down the strip with the tall drink with the straw coming out of it,
fanny pack and the whole deal, right?
Yeah, but it's like they'd be, honestly, at the rate we're going here, they'd be better off probably going elsewhere for a holiday.
No, but even in gambling, look at the retail value in gambling. Blackjack now in a lot of these places on the strip pays 6 to 5. So now they're on top of all those fees you just mentioned. There's even gambling fees. I mean, getting 6 to 5 on blackjack, only 2 times odds on craps in a lot of places. So now they're taking away the value gambling and resort stuff.
Yeah, it's I don't know, Nolan. I mean, you used to work for Caesars.
I have worked for a few other places in this town other than Fifth Street Sports.
Yeah,
yes.
I know. And
they paid better too.
Yes, that is very true. We've both been there.
I have been on the evil side of the fence. Here's the thing, and I'll throw this to Brian in a second. But let me give a little bit of a rant editorial about Las Vegas, and this is still the entertainment capital of the world, the greatest city in the world. That's why we live here. We love this place, and one of the reasons we bitch about it all the time, it's kind of like your family. You feel like you can bitch about them because you know them so well. Is because we want to see it better. We want to see our place thrive and survive, and we want people to be happy, and we want to be proud of the place we live. And one of the neat things about Las Vegas, since gambling was legalized here in Southern Nevada or in Nevada, was that Las Vegas understood. All those casino moguls who started this town understood that you have to cater and please the middle class. The middle class has to feel that they got a good value. People could come to Las Vegas, drive from California, fly in from wherever, come on Southwest Airlines, and get a $65 room and have a great steak dinner for $30, see a great show for $40. I mean, that was the way it was for a while. And they'd get paid, the right odds on blackjack, as you talk about,
and
Frank.
Everything.
Here's the problem now, and I saw this happen in 2006, 7, and 8, right before the crash in 2008, the economic crash. Everyone thought it was going to be build, boom, 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 everyone making a bunch of money, and the economy's good now. Yes, it is good now, and that's why you still see people along the street, and the casinos are full, and the airport's full. Yes, that's real good. So the economy's really, really good, but you cannot. There's only so much of a market for $385 rooms. Yeah. And we had shows that are $175 that, you start adding this up. Folks, middle-class America, the average person in this country makes, $45,000 a year, somewhere in there. A school teacher, a police officer, a truck driver, they can't afford 4 nights at the Mirage and a show and a dinner because they're going to be at $4 or $5 grand. And you bring up a couple of kids, now you're talking about some serious money,
and
right?
little gambling, Dosh.
And the gambling.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is not a middle-class town. This is the reason that this, and I'll close with this, the reason that Las Vegas is doing so well right now is because the economy of this country is also doing very, very well. It is a mirage.
Yeah, but you gotta. I grew up in this town, and back then when the boys ran this town, in 60s, 70s, and 80s, they had one motto. Because remember, they're forgetting that the core of this is the gambling. The motto that the boys had was, feed 'em and beat 'em. That was the whole thing. Feed 'em and beat 'em. Now you got these corporations coming in investing billions with all kinds of hedge funds and big interest rates. They've got to keep extracting so much money. I was at the Bellagio yesterday. I swear, sweating out my friend in a poker tournament. I was just a little hungry, so I walked by that little cafe by the sports book. They had a special now, a slice of margarita pizza and a soda, $11.49. One slice
and a drink.
No, and then the lady had the balls to say, "Oh yeah, we got a special here."
Well, you know what, guys?
I said, "What is it off special?"
Yeah, right, exactly. The point is, I think both of you are missing the main point here. The main point is that it isn't so much that the boys aren't running the show anymore.
Well, they knew how to do it.
Well, that's it. That is true, and that's a different matter. It's more to do with a shift in demographics, and it's in fact the demography that is driving this change and the economy. So demography and economy. In other words, guys our age, and I'm much, much younger than all of you guys, except for Oklahoma, Brian. I'm younger than you by at least a year, no, or two. But guys our age that like to gamble, we are an anomaly. And that outside of the ethnically Asians, Chinese in particular, love to gamble, which is why you see so much Chinese-focused marketing on the Strip and with the big casinos. But the millennials don't gamble. They don't like to gamble. This is the revenue in Vegas, which used to be gambling-driven, was 80%. I believe it's now down to 45%. And it's now a resort economy. No, it's no longer a gaming and gambling economy. So as a result, the things that you used to get for free or at a huge discount, if you came and dropped a little coin on the table, okay, if you played a little blackjack, some video poker, call your host, whatever, used to have fantastic steak dinners for $6. Those days are gone because millennials aren't going to drop the coin at the table, but they will pay $50 for that same $6 steak dinner that you had. They'll pay $10,000 for a table at Hakkasan. Yep. They'll pay for the pool parties. They'll pay for the day clubs and the night clubs and the after-hour clubs. So the economy of Vegas has shifted from a gaming and gambling economy to a resort economy. using a lot of millennial money, which primarily is their parents' credit cards. And so that's been a massive driver. We'll have a demographic shift again, but right now that's where the shift is taking it. If you remember the early 90s, late 80s and early 90s, when the baby boomers started to shift again demographically, we started to see more and more of the theme hotels coming up here in Las Vegas, starting with Excalibur, if you remember. Because now the baby boomers want to come here and they want to bring their families and their kids. I'm up on this, trust me.
You've now heard from the king and his royal court.
Yeah.
Let me go to the Supreme Court Justice. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, what do you think, Brian?
Well, I guess I'm the only non-Vegas resident. So, I see Vegas much like a tourist. I can definitely agree that, the Vegas that I remember, my first trip to Vegas, I was 18 or 19, and I think
Months?
we stayed at the Imperial.
Oh, you said the same thing. Sorry, we had to tease you. We said you're 18 months old your first visit, right?
I think I stayed at the Imperial Palace for $19 a night, and Vacation Village, I think, was right after that.
Yeah.
Cheap trips, and I know now. I go to Vegas several times a year, and I book almost exclusively off of Priceline or Hotwire because I feel like I can still get good deals there, but it's nothing like it used to be. And I'm an anomaly. Also, I don't play any table games. I don't play poker. I don't do anything other than bet sports. And unfortunately,
he's ruining it for everyone. He's ruining it for everyone.
I'm not a millennial though, but there's no comps for sports betting, so it's I'll bet as much sports as they'll take from me, but I get almost no comps for that. So
yeah, but that's
frustrating from my perspective.
Well, and that is so true. The days, Frank, where it was relationship in Las Vegas, where you had your casino host, and your casino host was your friend, and he said he was your friend. But nowadays, and we can really thank Gary Loveman a lot for this, the former CEO of Harrah's, who created a player rewards program.
Thank him or blame him.
Or blame him, that nearly bankrupted the company, by the way, which sort of took the ultimate extreme. It basically, you stopped being a player and you started now becoming a number, and it was how much coin in and how much coin out and how much dollars in and dollars out, and then, whatever value they are. So we're out of time already. Wow, we're just getting into the good stuff.
Just getting started.
Yeah,
here.
I know, it's crazy. But all right. We have a minute still, right?
I think right now, what would be a great business, the way these parking things are in sportsbook? Brian, how would you like to open up just a hardcore sportsbook where you watch your lines, you let the people bet, and a huge parking garage, and you just charge $5 to park? Every other place is charging $25 and $30 and $21 to park. You're on the strip, you charge $5 to park, and all you are is a sportsbook with advertising. And give people a ride. Just have like little shuttles just going down. Just have a parking garage. You can make that much money.
We're going to go to break. On the break, we're going to pen out our business plan, guys. We're going to make it happen when we come back. We're going to be grand opening of Frank's parking book scheme.
That's it. $5
when we come back here.
$5.
$5. Fifth Street Sports, Sports Byline USA, SB Nation Radio. Stay with us. We'll be right back on the other side of this break.
Everything is really getting ridiculous now.
All right. Welcome back to the show, Fifth Street Sports, on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network, America's sports network, by the way. And
Baseball time.
SB Nation Radio. Speaking of American pastimes, I believe baseball would qualify. Frank, the first month of baseball is now basically behind us. What are you seeing so
It is,
far?
and Brian and I talk about it sometimes. This is a very, very strange baseball season because usually in baseball, Brian, you agree, like you got to take at least 80 to 90% of your wagers got to be underdogs, plus prices, right?
At least.
At least.
Yeah.
Okay, so now here's the problem with that. Usually, anybody that starts laying prices, especially on the road in baseball, you have no chance for the year. Now you have teams like Kansas City, Cincinnati.
Tampa Bay.
No, not Tampa Bay, because they got some heart. There's about 4 or 5 teams. What is it? Cincinnati, Kansas City. The White Sox are showing a little bit of heart. Oh, Miami Marlins.
Miami,
and,
for sure.
And even San Diego. They never win. I mean, now, even taking prices on them, you still don't even get your money's worth because they got no heart. These teams just blow 3, 4, 5 in a row at home like nothing. What do you think about that, Brian?
I've heard that from a lot of people the last couple of weeks, and I'm suffering just like everyone else with these teams. The one thing I will say though is, I think of betting baseball as a marathon. Not that I've ever run a marathon, but
stop being bashful.
If you use that analogy, we're a mile or so into the marathon, and we've got a lot of running ahead of us. So here's the thing: as bad as those teams are, and those teams suck pretty bad, the public is going to overreact to how bad those teams are over the next 2-3 months, and stay the course, play the value, fade the public. The great thing about baseball is we have a sample size of, if you're betting effectively, you're betting several hundred games, if not 1,000 games a year. Their value is going to be there at the end of the year. So I think my advice would be hold your nose, bet those teams, and at the end of the year, I think you'll be all right.
Yeah, especially when the prices keep going up on, when you should be getting $1.40, now you're going to start getting $1.70, $1.75. But here would be an interesting bet.
Yeah.
Right now, what would you make the over and under on the amount of teams to lose 100 games or more?
Wow, good question. Wow.
Usually, what do you get, like 1 or 2 a year? Wouldn't you make it like 3.5? Like, you got to think Cincinnati, Kansas City, Miami, they're all going to blow 100, right?
Yeah, you wonder with the success of the Astros 3 years ago, right? Being the worst team in baseball, turning around. Now look at the Philadelphia 76ers. This is a team that was engineered to lose for years until they finally won. I think we all worry, especially ironically, as we're paying a integrity fee.
He's got to slip that in.
Leave that alone. But I think it's a legitimate question. You worry or you wonder how many teams are going to try to replicate this model. There's certainly a outlook, by a lot of GMs that if you're not going to win a championship, you might as well be as bad as you can and try to, get as much compensatory draft picks and trade material for future years when you are going to win. Kind of the opposite of the George Allen future is now approach from 40.
No, yeah, but I got to put the over and under on teams to lose 100 games. Okay, you got a great possibility with Cincinnati, Kansas City, and Miami. Then when you get your San Diegos and your Texases in there,
Texas is bad. Yeah,
I got to think if I was booking this, I think I would hang up at 3.5 teams to lose 100 or more games.
By the way, that's never happened. You never had 4 games.
I don't know.
I've
never
really bad teams, but then a lot of teams will lose 94, 95.
Yeah,
but you don't have.
I would put it at 3.5
because of the mathematics. It's difficult for 4 teams to lose. You know what I mean by that? Like, because they play each other, and it's
but look at how bad this Kansas City team is. And right now they're at home against the White Sox, who is one of these pigs, and then they're just getting swept at home by the White Sox. That's how bad this team is. I got to start thinking, Brian, you know how you start fading the public and taking this? You got to start getting plus 190, plus 210, 220 on these Kansas City teams because
I agree.
Because you're not even getting a draw at it. You got these teams got no heart. At least once in a while, remember when Colorado was blowing 90, 88, 97 games? A lot of times they would win a lot of 11-9 games. They'd give you some kind of a draw. These teams, like 8-0 today, they blow at home, no problem, as a favorite. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, Brian, let me give Go ahead, Brian. I got a question for you in a minute, but go ahead.
I want your question now.
All right, here's the question for both of you. I actively bet every day, almost every day, when I have money. And when I can't borrow money,
so twice a year you bet every day.
Well, I can always borrow.
Twice a year you bet every day.
Remarkably, my credit's good. I pay my bookie off before I pay the IRS. True story. That is a true story. That's why I got in trouble with the IRS.
Well, the IRS would just put tax liens. They won't break your kneecaps.
They did that to me. Yes, they did.
They won't take your kneecaps.
Don't ever screw with the IRS. And don't ever screw with the bookie. That's more dangerous. Anyway, my question was as follows. Here's what I've observed. Because I'm a contrarian, too. I'll bet the lousy teams the first month of the season because there's kind of like, they've been off for a long time. There's free agency, and you don't really know if the Cubs are going to be good, the Dodgers are going to be good, the Astros. You don't really know. Right? So there's value in the unknown was the idea. Right. Here's my question to you now. I've watched and I've been betting against the Cincinnati Reds, a horrible team, horrific team. I think they're 5-20, 5 wins, 20 losses. And they've already fired their manager. They fired him a week ago. The question, though, I've observed that there's a couple of pitchers on this staff. I don't have my notes in front of me. There's a couple of pitchers that have lost a number of one-run games. Here's my theory. Baseball is very pitching-centric. Pitching is everything, right? If you get a hot pitcher, he can be on a horrific team, but if he's throwing and he's getting the strikes and he could win the game as much as the best pitcher. So I'm thinking about, is there value in looking at these under-the-radar horrible teams but good pitchers, or at least decent pitchers on very bad teams? They're going to be getting 180, 190, 210. And, gee, somebody that keeps getting beat 4-3 every game, their record is, going to be 1-7. And their ERA and their whip is high, whatever. Yeah, but still, they're just not getting the right base hit at the right time, and maybe they're missing by a strike or two. But I'm just thinking that's where the value is on pitchers that are on bad teams that are just ready to break out and break. What do you think, Brian?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a pitcher for the Reds, Homer Bailey, that I know
yes,
a lot of bettors
that was one of them, yes.
Yeah. And he'll see he's got a lot of respect among bettors. He'll probably get bet, despite the fact that his team is horrible, he'll get bet the rest of the year. People respect him, and I think that's a great angle, is trying to identify good pitchers on bad teams at good prices. One thing that I think is surprising about betting baseball that a lot of people don't realize, because I think it's somewhat, it's not really intuitive, I don't think. But I'll throw this out. I'll ask you guys. If you were betting a bad team, would you rather bet a bad team when the total is really low, like say 7 or 7.5, or when the total is 11, 11.5, 12? Which scenario would you prefer to be on a pig in baseball?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
I would take.
It's obvious to me.
I think I would take the high total.
Easy. By the way, excuse me. This is so obvious to me, and I want you to tell me if I'm wrong. This is so obvious. Are you kidding me? A Colorado Rockies game where the ball flies out of the park, you can put a good pitcher in there, and it almost doesn't matter. So I'm thinking that it used to be the Cubs too. Cubs, when the wind's blowing out in Wrigley Field, Boston Red Sox used to be a good hitter's park. Those kind of things. I'm thinking this is such an obvious thing where you want to go on. By the way, I think we just took the bait, didn't we? We're a couple of three fish here in the pond, and you threw a thing. So I think
you guys nailed it. Yeah, but
all right.
Yeah, but isn't that priced in already, Brian? Isn't that priced in already?
Well, no, it's not. I mean, if you look at the ROI of betting dogs and low totals versus high totals. No, there's a huge advantage to being on the dog in the high totals
because they're much more likelier to win 9-6 than 2-1.
By the way, can you be more specific? Yeah, Brian. You're talking about like 9.5, 10, 10.5. I mean, what if it's 9? Is that a high total to you?
Well, it depends. American League or National.
Well,
yeah, I get that.
That's okay. That's both you guys. That's right, and that's a good point. What our definition of a high total is a little bit different than it was 2 or 3 years ago because the games become lower scoring, but. Yeah, anything above a 9 is certainly a high total in today's game. And specifically, we're looking at games where, to some extent, we have over umpires, but really we're looking for games where the wind is blowing out in key ballparks where the wind really affects totals. So, the wind blowing out at Fenway, Colorado, Wrigley Field, Cleveland, Baltimore, Yankee Stadium. There's about a dozen of them that. And those are great opportunities to be on pigs at good prices.
All right, so let me run something by you and Frank here. So who are the teams now in the second month of the season? Who are the teams, the situations? We talked about betting the lousy teams and fading maybe the public teams the first month of the season. Month 2, what's your strategy, gentlemen?
Oh, gosh, I'm not – but here's one betting angle that I wanted to get back to. And then correct me if I'm wrong, Brian. I've got a guy that makes money betting, and he takes dogs in tennis, in NBA, in baseball. And you know what he does? Like if he sees a tennis player that's got he's a live draw, he's pretty good, and let's say he's like plus 380, he'll take like plus 220 just to win the first set. Or his baseball, he'll take him first 5 innings. In NBA, he'll take him for the quarter or the half. Since they're the underdog that draws pretty live, the shorter the trial, the more chance you do have at winning it. Because, would you rather take a tennis player to win the first set at plus 210 or in a 5-set match, at plus 370, he's probably the better player is going to ground him out, right? You think that's got a little bit of theory to it?
I'd have to look at the data. Sports. That's why betting on sports is such a fascinating task because, in theory, these should be efficient markets, and the market should be able to.
Yeah, but do you think you have a live team like New Orleans or somebody that can shoot? Do you think you have a better chance to win the first quarter in Golden State or the game?
Well, teams have different personalities, and if when we get late into the season, there's teams that are phenomenal first quarter teams. Of the teams that are still left in the playoffs, the team that jumps out is Philadelphia. I think they were like 62-20 in the first half this year.
Wow! You mean against a spread? You mean?
Teams ever had.
This has been 62-20 against the spread.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Or it might have been 60-22. It was
close enough, Brian. We're not going to test you here.
Yeah. They were also for years they were bed shitters in the second half.
We're going to have
they were less good in the second half. Yes.
We're going to have to pick this up after the break. We'll have just a minute or so after the break to wrap it up before we get to top of the hour. Sorry, we just ran out of time there. We'll be right back after this here. This Reach Sports. All right, folks, welcome back to the show, Fifth Street Sports, here on Sports Byline USA, SB Nation Radio, Nick Geber, Frank Perez, Nolan Dalla, Oklahoma Brian, somewhere over there in Oklahoma. It's great to have you with us. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Fifth Street Sports Talk, and we're on Twitter at Fifth Street Sports. Really interesting technical discussion about baseball betting and betting in general, betting dogs. Really interesting way to look. We are, however, unfortunately, out of time for this hour. But don't worry, we'll be back next hour to bring you, well, a whole another hour of great sports talk you can bet on right here on Fifth Street Sports. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to be talking to Charles J., an analyst with betanyesports.eu. We're going to be talking a little NFL, a little NBA, a little NHL. NBA draft last day is today. All sorts of stuff. So, folks, be sure to stay with us here on the Sports Byline USA Network. Nick and Frank and Nolan and Brian will be right back after this. All right, welcome to Fifth Street Sports here on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network and SB Nation Radio. A big hello to our men and women in uniform listening around the world on American Forces. I'm Nick Geber, alongside Frank Perez, Nolan Dalla, and Oklahoma Brian is somewhere out there in Oklahoma.
And Juniper. We haven't introduced Juniper yet.
And Oklahoma Brian has a huge megaphone. And he's just yelling at us, and that's how we hear him. Folks, it's great to be with you as we get into hour number 2 of the show. We've got lots of topics to get to. So I just want to put out the Facebook page because it's a great way to continue the discussion. Facebook.com/Fifth Street Sports Talk. Now, Nolan, maybe by this time next week, our new website will have launched, maybe?
New website with all kinds of content, snippets of each show, a lot of expertise. And we got some fabulous people that are part of the Fifth Street community that you don't want to miss. Please sign up. Watch for the site. It's going to be fabulous.
Right. So that'll be up. And then, of course, you can find us on Twitter at Fifth Street Sports. No, just at Fifth Street Sports. There's no dot.
With a 5.
Dot, nothing.
Fifth Street with a 5.
At Fifth Street with a 5. Right, right. All right, so this hour, we're going to be talking to Charles J. a little bit about the NFL draft. It's the last day today. We're going to be talking about NHL, about the NBA playoffs, obviously. We could maybe just have a brief little discussion about next week's Kentucky Derby. I don't know if Charles is up on everything that's happening there. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. And then some big topics to bring up a little later on in the show. Do we just want to keep them as a surprise?
Give the teaser. Quick teaser.
I'll just say it, a first name and a last name, and then we can go from there, all right?
Go.
Pete Rose. So just, if you got something to say about Charlie Hustle, now's the time to get ready. And why don't you start on Facebook, facebook.com/Fifth Street Sports Talk. The man's getting divorced again or having his income re-looked at again. Poor guy.
What income?
I've gone through this. Well, apparently there's $100,000 a month in autograph signing income. Yeah, I know. We make about 100.
Who would want that scumbag's autograph? We're just getting started here.
Oh, not a chance. Great guy. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back to kick off hour number 2 in style. So don't go anywhere. 3 minutes we're going to be gone. You better be here when we come back.
That a girl, Juniper. You got to start earning your way.
All right, welcome back to the show. Fifth Street Sports, Sports Byline USA, SB Nation Radio. Nick Geber with Nolan Dalla, Frank Perez.
And it's not just a stag party.
What about Juniper?
Yeah, we do. If you're watching us on YouTube, our mascot Juniper is here, and she's enjoying the show. She likes to make herself the queen of the set,
she is
doesn't
the princess of the show.
Yes, she is indeed. All right, well, we've said goodbye to Oklahoma Brian, at least temporarily, and we're going to welcome into the show a very special guest, a good friend of the show's, Charles J., from an analyst with betanysports.eu, which is a great place, by the way, that you might want to go if you want to make a little wager or 2 or 3 or 10.
Or a big wager.
Or big wager. Go to betanysports.eu. It's very easy to sign up, very easy to put money there, and it's really just about everything.
Look at that bonus. That bonus is
the awesome bonus. So if you sign up now and use the affiliate code Fifth Street, you get a 50% bonus on your deposit up to a full $1,000.
Wow.
So that is just free money, folks. And you don't be a numpty, okay? Or as Nick Webster would say, don't be a mud punter. Don't be a numpty.
Translation?
An idiot.
Oh, an idiot. Thank you.
Take care. Free money. Look, if you were walking around and there was $1,000 lying around on the floor, oh, my God. Before we get to Charles J., I got to tell you this story very quickly. I was playing nickel video poker the other day. I put $20 in.
Shame.
I was up at $186 on $20.
What?
I was tired, though. So
you're up 35 times your buy-in?
Yeah. I had a couple of nice. I'll play triple play. I had a couple of nice little hits, right? So I had to use the loot really bad,
That's the restroom.
Right. So I grabbed my ticket, print out the ticket, stick it in my back pocket, head over to the bathroom, go do my business, go back to the machine. Bloody ticket fell out of my pocket.
No.
Some punter walking around Red Rock.
That's another gambler.
Yeah. Some punter walking around Red Rock picked up a $180
That's
ticket.
where I found. I was wondering about
wanker.
No, seriously, no, I'm not making that part up. You really lost a $187 ticket.
Yeah.
Oh,
I felt terrible. It really wrecked. I haven't been back since. It just wrecked the whole mood. It was about 3 weeks ago too. So.
By the way, you know how much money you've gambled over the years in these machines, on sports, on this, on I don't need to explain anything else. But you're mortified at losing $187.
Yeah, mortified. It wrecked my entire week.
Yeah.
You know what that is, Frank, right?
Yeah, that would make me sick. Losing a ticket. I mean, if you lose it, but not lose the ticket. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, there's no one to blame but myself. It's not like I can curse anyone out, But I kept listening.
This is what's called a bad beat story.
Yeah, it is. All right, enough of that. Let's get on to Charles J. Charles, are you there with us?
Please rescue us.
How are you guys? What's going on?
Doing great, Charles.
He's not doing great, but go ahead.
No, this was a while ago.
Right.
I got over it. Honestly, seriously.
Yeah, you're over it. We can tell.
It took me. I had to see my therapist to be able to get over that, but I did finally.
What was that other name for the bathroom you had?
What, the loo?
The loo, yeah. I want that in my vocabulary.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, Charles, it's great to have you with us. I know there's some topics we want to talk about. I did want to just briefly mention the Kentucky Derby. It's coming up next week. I know it's probably a little early still. Do you have any thoughts about that?
For me, I get involved about Tuesday. So I'll have all the past performances and I'll have charts and so forth. And if I have time, I'll do what football coaches do. I'll just study the film of all the contestants. It's a big field usually, so I'm much better at the Belmont. I've always been better at the Belmont. I think I've won 5 of the last 6 Belmonts.
Wow.
Or maybe 6 of the last 7.
You're from New York, right?
No, New Jersey, but have lived
Same
in Florida
thing.
a long time. So we're in racing. We're in racing territory here anyway. So I go to the Gulfstream to look at the simulcasts of the big races, and obviously we have our own big races down here. But
in Florida,
for the
big race in Florida, isn't that the? Isn't that where the DEA boat is chasing the longboat, the pencil boat, whatever they call it, loaded with the drogas?
You're about 25 years late with that one.
I thought everyone was in a white suit with a pink shirt.
You're right. This is not Miami Vice.
Oh, it's not.
Wreck
it.
All
right.
We actually, we actually have the richest horse race in the world here at Gulfstream, which is the Pegasus World Cup, which takes place in February.
That's the biggest. Is that really the biggest?
That's the biggest. Don't they have sometimes, Charles, like a $2, $3, $4 million guaranteed pick 6 or pick 8 where they got to give it away and stuff?
Yes, they do. And, in talking about the Pegasus, which not a lot of people, they've only run it for 2 years. It's run much differently than any other event in horse racing in the respect that it kind of works a little like the NFL in a way, where you kind of buy a franchise for your stable. And you have a spot in the Pegasus World Cup from year to year, and you can sell that spot, but you're not necessarily entering horses. The stable is automatically entered, and the stable then decides which horse it's going to enter. So there are, 9, 10, 11 stables who have bought in for, I don't know, I think it was $2 million or something like that, and they all split gate receipts. They split the television revenue between them. It's really a unique situation. They it's rare at Gulfstream that they charge admission. In this particular instance, they do, and they really dress up the place. I mean, they build unbelievable structures for one day only. I mean, there was a huge, like, 2-story restaurant and lounge that they had up there, and I went there after the race was over. And I'm looking at all this stuff and I'm saying, wow, they really have fixed up Gulfstream. And somebody on the premises there told me, oh, this is all coming down tonight. And It was like amazing to me because the place looked completely different after they did it.
No, but Charles, you made a great point in that race. That's where like the 9 to 11 owners that are putting up their world-class horses, they put their money where their mouth is. Like it's a $2 million buy-in per owner. You know what I mean? So isn't it something like that?
I don't know that it's necessary. Yeah. I don't know that it's necessarily been a moneymaker, but Frank Stronach, who owns the track and owns a number of other tracks and owns a television network devoted to horse racing, I guess the competitor to TVG, is the person behind this race, and he has his own horses in there as well. But I thought it was I liked it. I think it's a pretty ambitious undertaking, and I hope they continue it.
Yeah, Charles, at the beginning you were talking about how you do better in the Belmont than this Kentucky Derby, and I can see exactly why. Because in this Derby they run like 20 horses, they're fast, everybody's flying out of the gate. By the time they get down to the Belmont, the field's like about a third the size. It's a much longer race. You've had a little bit of time to see what these particular horses can do. I can see how you do much better in that.
Well, you're also talking about a different distance. You're talking about a mile and a half, and to me, I guess it's always been easier to handicap that kind of a race. I mean, I remember, I don't know if I'm going back about 5-6 years, when for one of my clients we had to do a really in-depth analysis of this race, and so I studied the tape of all the horses that were in the race, and I came up with, I kept coming back to this horse called Drosselmeyer. And Drosselmeyer was, I think, of like 14-1 on the morning line or something like that. But I kept coming back to him because I knew that he had enough to get the distance. And if he could get around the last turn clean, because he had been blocked a couple of times, that he could draw clear of the field. And so I remember just telling everybody at the track, and even before the track, we went to a couple of hangouts where track people go to look at the form and so forth and have breakfast before they go. And I just kept saying, Drosselmeyer, and nobody had that horse. All right. And
you were the crazy guy in the room, right? You were the crazy guy, right?
Well, I was confident of it because I had, I am of, in terms of handicapping, I am of sort of football mentality, basketball mentality.
Hey, Charles, I hate to interrupt you here, but we are going to have to take a break. It seems like there's never enough time in a segment. We're going to step aside. We'll be right back with Charles J.
Yeah.
From Better Than
And
Sports.
then tell us about the
price.
We'll
be right back. And we are back on Fifth Street Sports on the Sports Byline USA Network, SB Nation Radio. Nick Geber, Frank Perez, Nolan Dalla. We are on the phone with Charles J., betting analyst with the betanysports.eu. A great place to go if you like to wager, if you like to put a little coinage down, if you like to spend a little bit of your hard-earned dosh, you can do that. It's very easy. Just go to betanysports.eu. Sign up and use affiliate code Fifth Street. Get a 50% bonus on your deposit up to $1,000. It's a lot of money, and you want to take advantage of that while it's still here because it's not going to go on forever. Unlike us, we go on forever. Right, guys?
Some of us especially go on forever.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right, so let's get back to the phones. Welcome back, Charles J. Charles, we were just wrapping up a little bit on the ponies, and I know, Nolan, you were mid-thought before we were so rudely interrupted by some commercials.
Discussion between Frank and CJ. I have a question about the relevance of the Kentucky Derby, CJ. You talked about the Pegasus thing here in Florida that's only a couple of years old. The Breeders' Cup is obviously the thing that runs in the fall that the horse racing purists love the Breeders' Cup. Is the Kentucky Derby still relevant? And when I say relevant, obviously it has tradition, and no one can top that, or the just the majesty of the Derby. I understand all of the. It's a party basically. It's a party. But is this something that really serious gamblers like yourself, take seriously? The Kentucky Derby. What do you think, CJ?
Well, I don't know if I consider myself to be a serious horse player. I used to be, going back maybe 20, 25 years, when I used to actually do stretch calls for a 900 number. And that was amusing, but that's a whole nother story.
We would hear that story.
Well, that sounds sort of dirty, actually. Yeah, exactly. Stretch calls for
a 900 number.
When I call in, I never have them do that thing, but I might have them do naked yoga with whatever.
I will not give you a sample, but we had to recreate stretch calls at the local racetracks, and people would call in a 900 number to get the results and so on. This is pre-internet, obviously, but anyway, it's kind of distorted because the field is so big. I mean, when you got 20 horses, and I think that a lot of people, you're going to run in the Kentucky Derby if you have a serious 3-year-old, if you can, obviously. But then you'll skip the Preakness maybe, and if you didn't win, and go on to the Belmont, or maybe skip the other two. I don't consider it to be something that is of as much interest to me as the Preakness or the Belmont, or certain races in the Breeders' Cup. Or, of course, the Pegasus now, which sometimes has the best, a couple of the best horses. Sometimes I think it's had great horses the last couple of years, but maybe not a incredibly deep field. I guess to answer your question, I'm not all in on the Kentucky Derby. Let's put it that way.
Hey, you know what I was going to ask you? Oh, CJ, so finish your story now with this Belmont horse that you picked. What was it, Doshmeyer, 14-1?
Yeah, well, I was just saying, my culture, as in handicapping sports is, it's a football mentality or even a basketball mentality where we have at least a day or two, maybe a week even, to look at something and analyze it. I've never really been a guy who could walk into the track, pick up the form, and in 15 minutes pick winners. I guess there are people who are like that who can at least get close and get close to breaking even over the long run. But that's why the major races are something where you have time to handicap it. And these races we've just mentioned are among those races. So I had an opportunity to look at all the horses that were in the Belmont. And in the end, my conclusion was that Drosselmeyer, if he didn't get blocked, I think there was a race, I don't know if it may have been the Oak Lawn or something like that, where he got blocked. There was a horse called Fly Down. I believe it was Fly Down, sort of blocked his path coming around the turn, and but it looked like he was really gaining some momentum. And
what a memory!
I said if he gets clean around there, they were changing jockeys. Mike Smith was going on board, and he was bred for the distance. There were just a number of different factors that pointed me toward Drosselmeyer, including the price, and this is a true story now. When we went to the track to watch the simulcast, the Gulfstream, I went with a friend, and we stood down at the rail to watch it on the big screen they have there. So we're watching it, and when it comes time for them to come around the final turn, Drosselmeyer did get around clean. All right, and I knew he would close. So literally, and there's no BS, I turned around and started walking toward the payout window right there, because I thought it was over, and it was over. And I was, pretty close to first in line at the payout window. It was 14-1 or 16-1. I can't remember now, but I did hit that. I hit the try, and it was, I think, the next year or maybe 2 years later. What was it? Same situation in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and hit Drosselmeyer again. It was close to the same price, and he won the Breeders' Cup Classic. So that was another
payday.
How
for the same price again?
I tell you what, and
that's impossible
because he hadn't won. He hadn't won any races between the Belmont and that Breeders'
Athletic.
Cup.
But the thing is, now Drosselmeyer's in the glue. Have been long gone to the glue factory. Let's.
Sadly, yes. Sorry.
So we got a few minutes.
Speaking
Charles.
of the glue factory, what happened to your cat? Where did he go?
Yes. Oh.
Good.
Well, anyway,
cat?
let's turn our attention to the NFL draft. It is the final day today. What are the big surprises for you?
Well, surprises. I guess it was known about a day or two out that Cleveland was going to take Baker Mayfield. And if there was a surprise in that, it was the fact that, and I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when I was on the air, talking about Cleveland's attitude and sort of a shift from, a heavy analytics-based approach to, the more, sort of old school football guy approach. And, Mayfield didn't really have the measurables that these football guys, I talk about physical measurables that these football guys covet, being just over 6 feet tall, maybe not a rocket arm, but he graded out high in the analytics, which was, efficiency in this situation and that situation, dropbacks, play action, so forth, the kind of things. And as somebody that was basing their analysis on these metrics would look for. And so they took him. And I hope that works out well for them. The Jets got who they wanted. I think the Jets would have taken Sam Darnold with the first pick. And the Giants, I think, got who they wanted. They got the running back who they believe has the potential to be a Hall of Famer. And I think in the end, the Giants probably would not have taken a quarterback anyway in the first round. I think that this had something to do with Eli Manning finally getting with the new head coach, Pat Shurmur. And, of course, they're allowed these organized team activities prior to the draft now. So you can get you're able to get a little bit of a feel for certain personnel prior to having to go into the draft. And I think they wanted to get a little more of a look at Davis Webb. Who is someone who they didn't get a look at in the regular season last year. And the Giants didn't move until the fourth round when they took a quarterback who I think is going to wind up being a pretty good backup in the league at the very least, a kid named Kyle Lauletta, who was, I believe, the MVP of the Senior Bowl. And I saw an interview with him, and he was, there was a coach or a scout or somebody who was basically asking him, to describe certain plays that they were looking at on video. And this guy sounded like an assistant. He sounded like an offensive coordinator. He sounded so smart, this kid, that, and that is so important, in the NFL, because everything is so much more sophisticated these days. So if you're not one of those guys who like a Lamar Jackson, who can go out there and run around a lot and get by that way for a while, you have to be a very heady quarterback if you're a drop back kind of a guy. And I think the Giants liked that about Kyle Lauletta, and that's why they took him in the 4th round, and he'll compete for that backup job. Quick, because I know there's always a lot of Giants fans out there. There's always a lot of New Yorkers. Davis Webb, and I was thinking about this the other day. Davis Webb, at one time or another, actually played ahead of Baker Mayfield at Texas Tech, and also Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. And of course, Mahomes is the guy that the Chiefs made that trade to move up in the draft to take, and he'll be their starter this season. So he was good enough to do that, and he was good enough to go over to Cal and break many of the records of Jared Goff, who wound up going number 1 in the draft and made the Pro Bowl this past year. So even though you can tag him as being a system quarterback, and that system is not necessarily NFL friendly, he's still somebody with enough ability to have done all that. And I think in the final analysis, the Giants, who have a new GM, Dave Gettleman, decided that it might be worth looking at these guys this season, and that maybe these guys that they were looking at as the top quarterbacks in the draft weren't the franchise guy or possible Hall of Famer that Gettleman's been talking about using with the number 2 pick.
All right. Well, Charles J., it's always informative, always a pleasure to have you on. You can certainly find Charles at Bethany.
I want to hear more of Charles.
Well, we'll have him on again. Tune in
Please.
next week. We'll bring more Charles back. BethanySports.eu. Charles J., thank you so much. Really appreciate having you on. When we come back after break, folks, Pete Rose.
Oh, I can't wait.
We'll be right back. Fifth Street Sports.
By the way.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show.
Welcome back to the show.
Fifth Street Sports here on the Sports Byline USA Radio Network. Nick Geber, Frank
All right, folks, welcome back to the show.
And we have Nolan Dalla. And we got a lot going on today, folks. All right, so before the break, we were talking to CJ. I want to thank CJ for coming on.
Oh, he was terrific.
Yeah, that's Charles J. And I mentioned two words. Pete Rose.
A rose is a rose.
A rose is a rose, for Pete's sake. And I mentioned this because there was a news article. Let me get comfy here because this is the discussion. By the way, let's bring back Oklahoma Brian. Do we have Brian still? I think we have Brian. Brian might have rejoined us. Yeah, I don't want the bing bing anyway. All right, everyone's on. All right.
Just put Brian up in the window whenever we come back.
He is right there. By the way, if you're listening to us on Sports Byline, we will make reference to some visuals, which clearly, as you are listening to us through the miracle of radio, you're not seeing. If you'd like to see them, you can tune in to youtube.com/Fifth Street Sports and see this broadcast. See us live in all of our glory. But look.
Glory.
Pete Rose, a legend of the game of baseball, and a man who, in my opinion, much maligned, who belongs in the Hall of Fame of baseball, is not there, and I feel doubly, triply, quadruply bad for the man because I think that's how many divorces he's had. But he is being dragged back to court by his ex-wife, who's demanding more of his hard-earned money.
This is current news.
Yes. Saying that his money is hard-earned because he's making $100,000 a month by signing autographs for people. And she wants more of that money. She's saying he doesn't have all that much left over because he's a degenerate gambler. Now, first of all, guys, let me ask all of you, are you only a degenerate gambler when you lose? Because if he were making $10 million a month gambling, she wouldn't be calling him a degenerate gambler.
No, but here's one thing about Pete Rose, and it really shocked me. Brian, what do you think about this? You got to figure that this guy's on the sidelines. He's a coach. He's played every aspect of the game. He should know his baseball, okay? He should know, probabilities in baseball. Did you know that I did the research on his 423 documented bets that he made while he was coaching? He didn't bet on his team or anything, okay? He didn't do that. He bet the favorite every time. He had 423 favorites. Never bet the dog. Yeah, so here's a guy that should know his baseball, and he knows how, pitchers and hitters, and when a team is ripe and got heart and can win and are getting a price, he bet the favorite.
That's unbelievable.
Isn't that scary?
Well, I guess this is kind of an interesting subject. It's easy to make jokes about Pete Rose, but let me just be serious for a second about him. He was one of my favorite players growing up. And Pete, I don't know if you listen to the show, but if you do, I think the best thing for all of us would be for you to go to betanysports.eu, sign up code.
No. I thought it was going to be Gamblers Anonymous.
No. Here's Brian.
That was beautiful.
Brian would go to a GA class and hand out our Bet Any Sports card.
That's what you're going to say.
He would. Because but you're right, Brian. I know where you're going with this. Don't you wish? See, I like Pete Rose too. I thought he was a great player. He never cheated, never bet against his team or anything. I wish he would go to Fifth Street Sports, get your picks, and then go to Bet Any Sports.
Yeah, but Frank, you just said it, by the way. So Nolan, you and I we're going to fight over this. Yes, okay, talking to the mic.
I will talk in the mic in a minute. Go ahead, make your point, sir, before I come over the top of you and crush you.
Because you can make two choices, guys, about this, and let's just separate the gambling from the Hall of Fame issue. And I don't mean we'll talk about the gambling stuff, whether he's a smart bettor or a stupid bettor or whatever. Clearly, not a very sophisticated bettor. And I did have an opportunity actually to interview Pete Rose.
Wow.
Yeah, when we were bluffed, I was stuck. It was the only person within a geographical distance that could actually interview him. He was here in Las Vegas at the time, and I'm not really. I mean, if you listen to the show, you know I sort of shut up when baseball comes up because it's not really my specialty. But this is a fascinating man on a number of levels. Number one, he still holds records that have not been broken today. Now, if you'd said that 5 years ago, there were a lot more records that hadn't been broken 5 years ago. But today, he still has records that have yet to be broken, which, given the fact that when did he last play, in the 70s? Actually play.
No, I think he played in the 80s.
In the early 80s, right? Early 80s.
Retired 83, 84.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that is an incredible achievement. And then you want to say to yourself, and this goes a little bit back to the discussion we were having last week about a quote-unquote integrity fee that these leagues always suddenly want. Then you say to yourself, okay, so here's a man that has set records that have not been surpassed today, whose performance on the diamond was incredible, legendary. He is a legend of the game. Okay, off the diamond, he's not a perfect person. He has issues. He has alcohol issues. He has gambling issues. He has clearly issues in choosing an appropriate wife. But then he's not the only one. I'm equally as guilty. Okay,
right. so
guilty. Pete, I'm standing with you. But the fact is, those records stand today. Now, if you look at those records that we're talking about and the Hall of Fame in which he has been shut out of because of his gambling indiscretions, it's filled with people that have done everything from assaulting people with a baseball bat, throwing their wife through panes of glass, people that have created the records that have got them enshrined in the Hall of Fame.
But not while their players are managers.
No, hold on. People that have enshrined them in the Hall of Fame based on records of them that have been, and the reason those records have been set were because they were most likely juiced up to the hilt. So the Hall of Fame is a hall of BS. If you're going to say to a guy, well, your records don't count for baseball because you're a naughty man and you bet on baseball. But by the way, he never bet on his own team to lose. Okay? So
irrelevant, but go ahead.
No, it's not irrelevant. It's totally relevant.
It's totally relevant.
It's totally relevant. And the same entity, baseball, that owns a piece of FanDuel, okay, is saying you can't be in the Hall of Fame because you made a bet. This is hypocrisy. This is disgusting. And for my mind, it completely makes the Hall of Fame, let me just use one word, rubbish.
It is. But Brian, now check this out, because we know our baseball and everything, and I'm with you. Like, I really love Pete Rose, too, and that was a real man playing baseball. The way he slid in and suited up every day. There is no chance that this guy had 4,300 hits, that these wimps playing nowadays are going to get 215 hits for 20 consecutive years and surpass that hit total. Because this guy was a real player, don't you think?
He's not in the Hall of Fame.
Brian, what do you think? Before I come over the top of you all and just crush you all, Brian, please.
There's no way these wimps are going to. This was a real man playing.
Brian, does Pete Rose deserve to be in the Hall of Fame?
He deserves to be in some Hall of Fame. I don't know if it's the Baseball Hall of Fame. You know, I've always wanted to do my own Hall of Fame. I always thought this would be a great Hall of Fame. I've heard a lot of debate over the last few years about whether certain people should be in the Hall of Fame because of steroids or growth hormone or whatever. How great would it be to convince some truck stop somewhere in the middle of nowhere to let us do a steroid Hall of Fame? Conduct all the people that can't get into the regular Hall of Fame. We can make a Hall of Fame just for steroid users. Every March we could have the entire Fifth Street staff
in Stoners Hall of Fame, the Drinkers Hall of Fame. Boy, this is a great idea.
And in the case of the NFL, you could have the wife butcherer and waiter killer for Hall of Fame with one inductee, O.J. Simpson.
Hey, but Brian, I love that. That's hysterical. Hey, but let's not forget. Remember, we talked about it today. We want to do that thing on Fifth Street Sports on their website, the salami tracker. Don't
What?
let no. Oh
Excuse
my
me?
gosh, Brian's idea on this salami tracker is brilliant. Tell him a little bit about this, Brian, before we run out of time.
So quick summary. So one of my favorite bets in baseball is the Grand Salami. You'll see us give it out from time to time on the on Twitter, with our picks. But we're going to come up with a pretty cool website that tracks the Grand Salami in real time. So at any point in the night, instead of having to count up all the runs that have been scored that day, we're going to have a dynamic website that tracks the salami throughout the night. It should be a lot of fun. We're hoping maybe we can get a couple of books to do interactive salami betting.
There you go.
Once we get the site out, it should be pretty fun.
I think it's a great action thing, and we would be the first ones. We would be the first ones on Fifth Street Sports to have Brian's salami tracker.
Well, I tell you what, maybe Pete Rose can take the salami with him when he goes to fight. But Nolan, I know, because I want to get back to this, and we're going to continue this discussion, by the way, into the next hour, which is our No Holds Barred section, where we're actually no longer on the radio, but you can find us at youtube.com/Fifth Street Sports. Nolan, you actually think this guy doesn't belong in the
just a second. How much time do I have?
You've got about 3.5 minutes.
All right, so I'm going to give
you
me about a minute and a half.
1 minute.
First of all, gentlemen, do you understand what rules are? Do you understand that there's a Major League Baseball has inscripted rules for 100 years since the 1919 Black Sox scandal? By the way, gentlemen, if you don't think rules are important and laws and order, and in other words, when you sign your name and you say I'm going to be a player or a manager, if you don't think that you have to have some standards of behavior. By the way, I don't want to say I have no problem with people beating their wives, getting drunk, being awful people. Ty Cobb was an awful person apparently off the diamond. I get that. And by the way, even O.J. Simpson, I want to make it real clear. O.J. Simpson deserves to be in the NFL Hall of Fame.
He is in it, isn't he?
Yes. You know why? That shouldn't even be a question. Because nothing O.J. Simpson did cast any negativity on the NFL. Oh, wait a minute. While he was wait a minute. He was in. Excuse me. He's laughing. You need to put a towel in his mouth so he doesn't embarrass himself. Just a second. He was inducted shortly after he was an NFL player when he was a movie star and all so forth. You can't take him out. So he was inducted before any of these other issues came about. With Pete Rose, we know player. A great player. Okay, one of the greatest players of all time. Manager, decent manager. But he broke the rules, the cardinal rule of baseball, which is betting on baseball was forbidden. And by the way, real quick, if Pete Rose, how much more time do I have? Another 30 seconds?
I'm going to cut you off right now.
Just seriously, I'm getting fired up, and I just want to tear the whole setup because Pete Rose knowingly violated the most cardinal rule of the sport, which is I shall not gamble on the sport.
But Major League Baseball isn't the entity that is inducting him into the Hall of Fame.
By the way,
it is the entity that is stopping him from being inducted into the Hall of Fame. He did not break the Hall of Fame's rules. He broke Major League Baseball's rules. You're absolutely wrong in the very premise of your argument.
I want to see the Steroid Hall of Fame.
I'd like the Steroid Hall. All right, we got to go to break. We'll be right back here on Fifth Street Sports.
That's got to be the funniest thing.
Well, good friends, we thank you for joining us here on Fifth Street Sports. It is always a pleasure to bring the show to you, as we do every Saturday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on Sports Byline USA. And you can find us repeats of the show if you missed it, or pieces of it you want to see. Go to our website, or even better, go to our YouTube page at youtube.com.
And stay tuned for fifthstreetsports.com. A lot of great content. You gentlemen, CJ, Brian Allen, all the people that you know and love are going to be contributing. It's going to be phenomenal. The site's launching this next week.
And next week, by the way, I just let everyone know, Cody Longo will be back talking about esports. He's been on vacation for a couple of weeks. Wanker. He gets a vacation, but we don't. All right. So, listen, folks, if you're listening to us on the radio, we are going to continue our heated discussion. I'm going to tell you why Nolan is absolutely full of caca when we come back at for the next hour, which you can find by going to youtube.com/Fifth Street Sports, or you can also find us at facebook.com/Fifth Street Sports Talk. You'll find links to the show. If you're not able to stay with us, it's been a pleasure having you with us. And I do want to thank Charles J. from BetAnySports.eu for coming on. And just a reminder to head over to BetAnySports.eu. Sign up right now, folks, and get a 50% bonus on your deposit up to 1,000 smackaroonies. So make sure you take full advantage of that at betanysports.eu. I'll be back on the air with you with Nick Webster on Friday for Fifth Street Sports Soccer. And, of course, the whole crew here will be back next Saturday. Stay tuned on the web, though. We're going to be going into hour number 3. It is going to be Fifth Street Sports. I'd say it's no holds barred, but Nolan, Dalla, I think it's more like unhinged, to be honest with you.
We're going to 6th Street.
5th and a half. All right, folks. Be sure to stay with us. unstable.
I like that.
Just quite frankly, crazy. Hey, Boggs, you got it. There we go. By the way, I'd like to thank our producer, Boggs Paulino, technical director, doing such a great job, as always. Nick Geber, not Frank Lopez. That's your new name. Not Frank Lopez. Frank Perez, Nolan Dalla, and we do have Oklahoma Brian in the box. Listen, guys, before we get to our heated discussion about Pete Rose, and quite frankly, Nolan, whatever you're going to say about this, I'm going to roll my eyes because this is very little. There's zero justification.
Prepare to be converted,
you
sir.
could ever have for excluding that man from the Hall of Fame. We were talking in the show earlier, and isn't it nice? It's not nice, but we're not on the radio right now, so we don't have to adhere to some of the nice norms.
We can curse.
I'm pulling up his records, by the way, so I can.
Yeah, Curtis Mayfield.
Just so I can. No.
We were talking about value in Vegas, and I was saying that I'd gone to see the Cirque du Soleil doing the Beatles' Love, which is fantastic. And then I got this wonderful invitation here, Nolan, to Le Rêve, when I know you said you have tickets. Yeah. So this isn't quite the same. I guess for $144 here, I get a ticket and a buffet. Grandview ticket and a buffet.
I hope you can eat $144 worth of food.
Well, or just $80 for the ticket.
You probably can, knowing you.
I don't do a lot of buffets. But I was more excited, Nolan, to open a letter that said, "Would you like to have a free complimentary dinner?" And I'm thinking, wow, that's awesome. You're invited to a seminar with a complimentary meal. Well, Nolan, I open it up and I see it's from the Palm Mortuary Crematorium in Las Vegas.
That's a cemetery.
Yeah, it says pre-planning cemetery, pre-planning seminar with free dinner. I'm thinking, well, do they know something that I don't?
By the way, I got one of those. I'm not making this up. I put it out on Twitter or Facebook. I got one of these myself from Palm Mortuary, and pre-planning was the idea. Yeah. And I'm not making this up. And it was to be held at a pizzeria. And I'm like, this doesn't seem right. I'm eating the pizza. It's like I'm not sure of the toppings here, and they're talking about
pre-plan this, you bastards.
That pizza tastes funny and.
Sorry.
Whatever,
It's like, yeah, right, exactly. All right, well, listen, now let's bring back the boxers and Oklahoma Brian, because I can hear him chortling away back there. All right, guys, look, Nolan.
Guzzling away back there.
Nolan.
Guzzling.
This man, Jose Canseco. I'm looking at a picture of him right now. And I played poker against Jose Canseco.
Yeah, he was a poker player.
Yeah, at the LG. I wrote a great piece about this for Bluff Magazine at the time. It was a big charity tournament, the LG tournament here, and it was at the Palms. That man's neck was so ridiculously huge. Yeah. Its veins had a life of their own that moved separately from his neck, from the rest of his body. He was so juiced up. I mean, yeah.
How was the poker game?
It was very hyper aggressive. It's what you would expect. He played like Brian Wilson. He just pushed it. He tried to muscle his way through and push into pots, and Jennifer Harmon just absolutely destroyed him in that game. But she generally destroys most people she plays poker against. I mean, let's take this to the Pete Rose discussion. Jose Canseco said you should induct all or none of the juiced players into the Hall of Fame. Now, the man may be a moron 100 times over, but in this case, he's right. You're either going to say, yeah, you're a steroid user, you're a gambler, you're a pederast, I don't know what the hell your problem is. But, and those are, all bad things if but you play very well. You've got all sorts of records. Hell, O.J. Simpson's in the Football Hall of Fame because he played football very well, but he butchered 2 people. There's all sorts of other unsavory characters in various Hall of Fames. To suddenly say to Pete Rose, well, Pete, and by the way, this isn't Major League Baseball saying this, so let's just understand this, Nolan. Okay? The Hall of Fame is a separate non-profit organization that's supposed to promote the records of people of superlative baseball achievement. It is not an enforcer for the Major League Baseball's rules. It's you could then just as easily say, well, you wrote bad checks, or you violated Section 53, you tried to bang the MLB secretary one night in a hotel room, and she said no. I mean, you sexual harassment. God knows. By the way, wasn't one of the commissioners of Major League Baseball a notorious sexual harasser?
What if?
So anyway,
Whatever.
look, the fact of the matter is, and I open it up to you guys, except Nolan. I think that it makes the Hall of Fame completely meaningless that a guy because a guy like Pete Rose isn't in it. All right, I open it up for that.
I tend to agree with Nick, but having said that, I also think I haven't been to a Hall of Fame that wasn't boring. So with them or without, I mean, I've never been to the Baseball Hall of Fame. That's one of the ones I haven't been to, but I've been to quite a few. And if it would make it more exciting, I'm for putting Pete in there. Now, a steroid Hall of Fame, that sounds more exciting. Is there room in the basement? Do you guys have? Can we start it in Nick's basement?
On Fifth Street, you mean?
I mean, we need revenue, right, guys?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we'll get open the Hall of Fame. Well,
Steroid Hall of Fame.
Why not?
But Brian,
is there money to get us all mustard jackets?
but the steroid Hall of Fame has an end date because there's no more steroids, right? So it's kind of going to be like it's over. You know, like you're going to put Barry Bonds as the number one hitter, and that's over because nobody else is doing steroids, right?
Oh, you're naive. You don't think there's doping going on in Tour de France or?
Oh
sure.
yeah,
I think it's rampant.
So now would you?
We can have an entire Russian section.
Yes.
You can have cycling section.
Yeah, but I mean,
Ian,
in baseball,
I thought about this
there
also. I just want one other thing. You know how every Hall of Fame has its, like the NFL Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame, they all have like a silhouette, right, of a different athlete. Like maybe the NBA, it's Jerry West, or Football Hall of Fame they have their own logo. Ours would be a guy with a syringe in his ass, and that'll be our logo.
Very nice.
We'll get mustard-colored jackets.
But then you can have the before and after pictures. You know what I mean? Like
absolutely.
Like you have Barry in his 20s and Barry in his 30s, and you go, look at this. I mean, how did this guy put on 70 pounds and all this muscle?
Absolutely. The beauty is I'm not a lawyer, by the way, in case everybody was wondering.
Obviously.
I think we don't need their permission. I think we could just induct them. Anybody that we think applies, to the Lance Armstrong, Jose Canseco, Barry Bonds.
Hold on. So,
Lance Armstrong.
So here's the question. So let's say a guy like Lance Armstrong, who has admitted that he doped, but has said, really it was sort of you were the exception if you didn't dope. Now,
sure,
I think that you either have to say it was an uneven playing field while Lance Armstrong was winning all those titles, or you have to say every title that was won during the doping era has to be thrown out because it's an uneven playing field. So let's take it back to baseball for a minute. So if you're in the Hall of Fame and you're looking at Barry Bonds or whoever else has got great numbers and achievements, you have to say, is this a tainted number or not? If the number is tainted, well, does it not taint the entire Hall of Fame? When you look at Pete Rose, he did nothing to taint the integrity of the numbers that he put up on the board. And I'm not talking about the handicapping board, the board that he put in terms of the scoreboard. He played baseball flawlessly and cleanly. And those numbers are real. And the fact that he went and made a bet or two, or 10, or 1,000,
or 423,
or 423, who cares? He didn't bet on his own team to lose. That's the only thing that would really potentially mess with the integrity of the game. And Nolan, okay, fine, he broke Major League Baseball's rules. My God, isn't butchering your wife and some waiter breaking somebody's rules as well? I mean, look, and the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame isn't Major League Baseball. It's an independent organization that does not enforce the rules of Major League Baseball. So I think it's bullshit. It's a spurious bullshit argument you're going to make, Nolan. Go ahead and make it, Nolan.
Go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead, Brian.
Okay, no, I guess my question is, we can debate all day whether he's eligible for the Baseball Hall of Fame.
That's what we're going to do.
I think the bigger question is he eligible for the basement tapes?
Well, he is more than eligible for the basement tapes, and we'll talk about that a little later. But
let's get him to Bet Any Sports. Let's get him at BetAnySports.eu.
Let me hear your take. Here.
All of you gentlemen have made me sad sitting here.
We care.
Do you gentlemen understand? Baseball and all of life has rules. When you set forth rules, whether they're from whatever, you follow the fucking rules. And when you break the fucking rules, you're fucked. All right? Excuse me. You'll interrupt me in a minute. I didn't interrupt you. When you break the rules, you're fucked as you deserve to be fucked. Pete Rose didn't break the rules. He obliterated them, both as a player and as a club manager. Is Pete Rose entitled to be in the Hall of Fame based on his player greatness and status and statistics? Full concession, of course.
That's to be the only
Wait a
argument.
minute. You're interrupting me.
Yeah, of course.
He was a great player for 20-something years. Of course that's a fact.
Yes, a real player.
That being said, he also, as a manager, knowingly violated the players, violated the rules. So why is Nolan Dalla so upset about rules and laws and this and that? Because
you're a Democrat.
But
you're a Democrat.
I'm not a Democrat. I'm a socialist. But that's another story. Okay. And when I drive home today, the speed zone will be 55. I'll probably drive 75. We all break rules. I understand that. Okay, I get that. But you gentlemen telling me that when in the 80s and the 90s and whatever year it was, when a bunch of players did not violate steroids, they played clean, and instead of batting 290, they batted 265, and instead of hitting 38 home runs, they hit 28 home runs. And instead of making $1.9 million, they made $900,000. They cost themselves money and status because they followed the fucking rules. Are you telling me, gentlemen, you don't think that that's worth honoring? And you're now going to just wall over as, wait a minute, let me finish, as wallflowers and say, well, they were still great. We cheered. We enjoyed watching the whole spectacle. Don't you have any shame, sir?
None whatsoever.
Don't you believe that why they have any fucking rules? Let everybody cheat. Let everybody steal. Let everybody just do whatever. Make it a fucking free-for-all for everybody because none of the fucking rules matter.
You sound like CNN right now. You're sounding like CNN and MSNBC.
You're going to stand by the rules. Now, it's your turn.
This guy should be on CNN and MSNBC.
I'm not finished yet. Well, I'm not finished yet.
Hold on. First of all, two things. Number one is, Nolan, you break the rules of fashion every day. Okay? So let's just put that one down.
Nothing's in writing.
Number two.
Actually,
there's an ancient proverb, Nolan. It says the rules are there. Confucius say rules are there for when the brains run out. Okay? And you are comparing here are two totally separate things. It is outrageous that players who adhered to the rules of steroid use, of the actual integrity of the game itself, should be penalized while people cheated by taking steroids so their on-field performance would be better than the other person's on-field performance. If the Hall of Fame and Major League Baseball were to say Pete Rose bet on himself and as a result he didn't hit quite so many home runs, or he threw games as a manager, well, that's referring to his performance on the field. And that is a decided lack of integrity, and that tarnishes the entire aspect of the game of baseball. Hold on.
All right.
I'm differentiating the game of baseball and the business of baseball. Those are two very, very, very different things, Nolan. Pete Rose was clean as a freaking whistle when it came to the game of baseball.
Playing it. His performance on the diamond was superlative. As a fan of sports, that's what I care about. The fact that the business of baseball and Pete Rose,
as a manager, he obliterated the rules.
Yeah, no.
Don't say but. No. He's a manager of the fucking Cincinnati Reds.
Hold on.
He's a great. Wait a minute, real quick. He's a great player, but as a manager of the Cincinnati Reds, he's on the fucking phone with his bookie. Are you kidding me?
I got a
but he
question for you
didn't
guys.
bet against himself.
I don't care about that. He's holding off. Yes, it does make a difference because he's got a reliever in the bullpen instead of putting it in on whatever team and whatever, these things, there's a domino effect on decisions.
Was that ever proven?
Of course it. By the way, do you want to? Seriously, you're making me sick, sir.
Well, go through.
Have you no shame?
Else,
have you?
Hang on, Brian, jump in here.
Before I go to Brian, real quick. Let me tell you why I get so angry about this. Because Pete Rose didn't shame baseball, which I don't give a fuck about. I'm not a baseball fan. I don't give a fuck about baseball. He shamed gamblers. If in 1989 when he was caught, he would have said, yeah, I like to gamble. Yes, I did it. Yeah, I gamble on games. And yeah, I'm betting on my team and I'm putting my heart in. I can get that. I kind of respect that. But you know what? He didn't do that. He lied.
Well, that's a
wait. That's not a. He lied in 1989, in 2002. I can go 2001, and he wrote a goddamn autobiography in 2014 where he lied again.
Yeah, but you just told me.
Wait a minute. He lied and lied and lied and lied and lied and lied, and you're telling me that this guy is somebody you respect?
No.
This guy's a goddamn liar, and not only that. Come on, Juniper. See, she knows wisdom. She knows wisdom. My baby knows wisdom.
You're very upset with her.
She knows exactly what I'm saying. Pete Rose violated everything that was in the rules about baseball. And he set sports gambling and the image of sports gambling back decades because he doesn't fess up to and say, hey, I love to gamble. What the fuck? I'm a gambler, as are 80 million people in the United States.
But you're talking about character, not about performance.
A couple of things. First of all, if someone poured Nolan a drink,
the bottle's empty.
You're running out there. Okay. Nick, can you take care of that?
No. Because I have no shame.
I got more, but go ahead, Brian. Brian, take the floor. I got more, but please take the floor for a couple of minutes while I catch a breather.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, getting back to our discussion on how horrible the Reds and the Marlins are, maybe that's the problem, that they don't have enough steroids, or they're doing the wrong ones. I don't know. But in terms of gambling and Pete Rose, we've come a long way since the Pete Rose scandal. And I think in the right way. I mean, I look at drug addiction, right? We now look at drug addiction as a disease, and we are, I think, a little more sympathetic towards people who suffer from addictions.
Like Pete Rose.
Maybe we should, and maybe in the case of Pete Rose, if the man is a sick gambler,
bullshit.
I mean, does he not deserve the same consideration? Yeah,
that's why I said he was
degenerate.
degenerate.
Favorites.
Yeah, should I get you? By the way, Brian, you need to have a violin. This is sickening. I so love you and respect you, but come on, buddy. Seriously, are you going to say, he's got a disease? We got to be careful. He's such. Seriously, Brian, come on.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
But Nolan,
I think he does. I think he has. He's basically squandered his entire legacy.
And I've been gambling 40 years too. And where's my fucking violin? And I've lost a lot of money.
Where are your records?
Well, and like Frank said, he's betting only favorites. So he's apparently a bad gambler and a degenerate gambler, which is a.
But Brian, I've never lied about what I do, man. I never lied about what I fucking love and what I do. I never was pretending to be. I never pretended to be anything that I'm not. And I don't like the fact that the man has pretended for fucking 25 years, and he writes an autobiography in 2014 where he says, "I didn't really bet," and then all of a sudden, a year later, he can. Everything this man said is a goddamn lie.
Well, hold on. He just wrote. Hold on.
About him that has any integrity. And by the way, he's caught with underage girls. There's all kinds. This is a scumbag.
How old were they? Were they 18?
Yeah.
He's
a fucking scumbag.
What is underage?
And by the way, there's
18?
a lot of people I go to bat for. If you're going to bat for Pete Rose, a great baseball player, but a fucking scumbag, there's a lot of great causes in the world. Pete Rose is not one of them.
I will just say this: if you're going to go to bat for a lot of people, hold on. If you're going to go to bat for a lot of people, you better make sure it's more than 14,053 times. Then you'll get Pete Rose's record.
That's a real player. That guy earned every dollar he made.
At bats, Pete Rose. But look. Hold on, Nolan. You said to me, while we were having a discussion, that you thought O.J. Simpson belonged in the Football Hall of Fame. Well, and I tell you what, Pete Rose has subsequently written a book, which you did not know about, called If I Did It. Oh, wait a minute.
O.J. Simpson,
no, that was O.J. No, I'm making a joke here, okay? It was a joke. Ha ha. Look, the fact of the matter is, he may be a scumbag. He may be
because
a
everything O.J. Simpson did
You've already
was
spat
off
on me
the
5
field.
times.
Was off the field. It has nothing to do. By the way, Ty Cobb, awful man.
Everything
awful
that we
people.
are talking about.
By the way, O.J. Simpson's. But excuse me.
Hold on.
Does O.J. Simpson's crimes reflect on the NFL? Does that have anything to do with football?
Yes.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
He killed a
because he's a crazy guy that's been pampered to by the leagues for so long.
After 20 years after he was retired.
Does Pete Rose's gambling affect in any way his record for having 10,320 career outs? Or as a switch hitter career, 10,300. How does his gambling affect how many 15,890 plate appearances? How does his gambling affect a career times reaching base record of 5,929?
Because the NFL Hall of Fame, the NFL
nothing to do
has
with
no rules. This is ridiculous. What I'm about to say. The NFL has no rules against killing your wife and another innocent bystander. That says you can't be in football. Baseball has fucking rules.
But the Baseball Hall of Fame doesn't have rules
for life. And by the way, the people who vote on to your argument, who votes on the Hall of Fame? It's baseball writers. By the way, these are baseball purists. These are people who love the game far more than any of us sitting here.
Because their noses are so busy up the arse of the baseball commissioner for their free tickets and free sandwiches in the bloody press box.
They spend all kinds of time, and they love the game, and they understand that Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and people that have cheated during the game, they violated the basic tenet that when you step onto the baseball diamond, you're not a high on cocaine and you're not, a cheater. You may be the most horrible person in the world on the bar. And by the way, real quick, Billy Martin, Mickey Mantle, if you take it like their stories of getting drunk, done all kinds of weird stuff off the diamond. But you know what? Mickey Mantle and all those people we're talking about in the old days, they never. Kenny Stabler, I could go on with all kinds of stories, and we all know those stories.
Kenny Powers?
There is nothing that stopped, that impeded them from being great players, as opposed to Pete Rose standing in the dugout with a fucking phone. You don't know if he's talking to the relief pitcher or he's talking to his goddamn bookie.
Well, maybe if that's the issue,
he's a scumbag.
Then Pete Rose, his managerial achievements shouldn't go in the Hall of Fame, but certainly his playing achievements should go.
All right, I've talked too long, and Nick's talked too long, and even Frank's almost talked. Brian, what do you think?
I feel like I'm listening to Al Pacino in Scent of the Woman.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Pete, if you're listening, sounds like it's been a rough year or so. You could probably use 2 really good overnight plays. So we'll give them out right now if that's good.
We could help him, Ryan. We could really help this guy.
Gentlemen, excuse me for a second. Give me a second. I'm going to lean forward here for a second. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can hear you.
Just a second. Gentlemen, this is everybody listening to me right now and talking to me right now. This is a sports gambling show.
It is.
By the way, do you have integrity about what I'm not this is I'm not being funny. Do you care about the way that you're envisioned as a gambler? Do you care about Frank Perez?
That's a bad question for me right now.
Do you want people to look at you like you're a goddamn drug dealer?
They do right now. Believe it or not, personally, I'm toxic right now in this industry. So,
I'm just saying that sports gambling, what Brian Allen is doing, Oklahoma Johnny, and Oklahoma, Brian, and we've had people on the show. This is real quick. I've been in this thing 40 years. What we do is respectable. Everybody that's on Wall Street investing in stocks and this and doing this and the cryptocurrencies, these are all respectable people, so to speak. What we do in sports gambling is also respectable. Do you think what Pete Rose did advanced our profession?
No.
No, he didn't.
No,
he set it back decades.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't belong in the
How
Hall of
about
Fame.
being honest and saying, I gamble on games, and here's why I think it's okay.
I would have liked to know what he was betting on.
Yeah.
But
all of that's
but
true,
but
but
listen, Nolan.
By
This is
the way,
where you gotta,
real quick, the Hall of Fame is not some. This is not like the graduating class of Exeter here. Here's what the Hall of Fame is. It is meant to honor. It is meant to pay tribute to people who have given something of themselves to the game of baseball or whatever the thing is.
Then put Shoeless Joe in.
Huh?
Then put Shoeless Joe back in. He didn't do nothing.
Well, I don't know that story in 1990. That's a whole other.
Right.
Every case should
You
be.
weren't there?
Well, let's go there. I mean, now that you're being trial, you're hanging this guy. Let me explain something to you.
He knowingly.
Okay, when you say
violated
about
the laws,
lying,
he
about
lied
the
and
betting.
lied and lied and lied and lied and lied and lied, and then he wrote a book and lied again.
Now, Nolan, you're a regular guy like the rest of us. Okay, let's rewind the tape and be a little easy. We have been in a situation sometimes with the wife or with whoever where we had to tell a lie. You didn't want to. You didn't want to confront it. It was uncomfortable. And when you told it, then you had to tell another one and another. Next thing you know,
So
it
why
got,
have rules? Just
it
throw
got
the
out of
goddamn
control.
rule book out.
It got
Why
out of
have
control.
rules? It doesn't matter. Everybody can do whatever they
You
want.
sound like
What
Jimmy the
fuck?
Bridge Builder. You sound
The
like
National-
Jimmy
No,
the
it's
Bridge Builder.
sickening.
The
It's
National
sickening.
Baseball Hall of Fame is a non-profit company committed to preserving the history of America's pastime and celebrating the legendary players, managers, umpires, and executives who have made the game.
Brian, I'm going to ask you a
fan
question.
favorite
I'm
for
going to ask
more
you a
than a
question.
century.
Brian, I'm looking at you. Can you see me pointing? Because I'm like Babe Ruth pointing to the 1930 whatever.
That was
Can
a
you
myth,
see me,
by
Brian?
the way.
All right, good. Thank you.
Yes.
I want just a second. You look like an athlete. We're talking about you as a marathon runner. You run a marathon,
Yeah,
and
oh,
you
yeah.
decide to run a marathon, but you're not doped up. And by the way, this isn't a joke, okay? I know that we're having fun here. This is not a fucking joke. We're talking about people's livelihoods. We're talking about the history of. By the way, sports are not. This is not a joke. Sports for a lot of people is essentially a reflection of society. It's a reflection of who we are. It's a reflection of whenever we are from, whatever city, those people that we cheer on a baseball field or a football field, they essentially embody us because they represent St. Louis or Baltimore or Miami. This is not some trivial thing, okay? So when you have somebody taking the field, and if Brian is taking the field and he's not doping, and he's not gambling, and he may be the biggest scumbag in the world because I've seen him drink. So I like Brian. He's my kind of guy. In the bar, he's like a greatest guy. I want to hang out with him. But on the field, Brian completely is a man of integrity. He does not. He completely plays above board. And then the guy next to him, he's on first base. The guy on second base is doping and da-da-da and da-da-da, and he's breaking all the rules.
Yeah, but doping
and then the doper gets a bigger contract than Brian. Brian, are you telling me that you're comfortable with that, sir?
Well,
Are you comfortable with the
already made
doper,
this argument,
the doper
Nolan.
making more money and getting more? Seriously,
That's a great
Brian,
question.
are you comfortable with that?
No, hey, I think it's a great question. And I've, for years, wondered why is the players' union not more aggressive in trying to enforce testing and other doping enforcement? Because, I mean, there's only a finite amount of positions in Major League Baseball. It seems to me like they work against their own self-interest in trying to collective bargaining against tighter enforcement of doping and steroids testing. That's never made any sense to me. To me, it's a workforce safety issue.
I'm
If I'm a professional
putting
baseball
the pressure
player-
on you. I want you to answer the question. You're playing the game fairly. You're making whatever amount of money, and you know the doper who hit 25 more home runs than you did because he cheated. You're telling me you're comfortable with that? You didn't answer my question. Answer my question.
No, of course not.
No, I want Brian to answer.
Of course you wouldn't be comfortable.
I get to answer this question. So no, I'm not. But let me ask you a question. All right?
No, you didn't answer that.
You did.
That's not enough. Oh, I'm not. But like, what's the penalty? He's already earned his millions of dollars. So what's the only way you can correct the situation, sir? What's the only way? It's to keep Roger Clemens out and Barry Bonds out and people who cheated for fucking their whole careers and destroyed people like you.
Performance-enhancing drugs.
I want to know something. Brian, that's not a good enough answer. I want you to tell me why these people deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, and then you're sitting there fucking shining shoes in a car wash.
Yeah. Hey, I'm on the same page with you. I think I would be furious if I was a player who was not juicing.
No, how about if you just care about the game and care about rules and what's prescribed? No, that's not good enough, Brian.
Well, I don't know that I really care as far as a fan goes. I think I wish that the Reds had maybe or the Marlins had been juicing this year. That would have would have been a better outcome for me, I think, thus far. But
I'm destroying all of you. It's obvious.
You're not
I wiped him out.
Except for your own reputation.
He's completely surrendered. He doesn't understand that rules are rules. And when you sign a contract, the words on the contract mean something, and you follow the goddamn rules.
But we are talking about the performance, one-man statistics as a baseball player, okay? You are trying to compare this to performance-enhancing drugs. I use the performance-enhancing drugs analogy to say that it is hypocrisy that you're going to hold gambling up here and performance-enhancing drugs down here. When this one, performance-enhancing drugs, actually is what it says. It enhances your performance to an advantage over somebody else. The fact that Pete Rose gambled, well, maybe a violation of his contract with Major League Baseball, and certainly was, by the way, and I'm not suggesting that he didn't break the Major League Baseball rules against gambling, had absolutely zero bearing on the fact that the man managed to put up an enormous amount of records which have yet to be broken.
And
the fact that he gambled had nothing to do with that. The fact that he gambled... Okay. No, don't shout.
Go ahead.
Just stop. Go ahead. Let me finish making my point before you get all antsy and spit all over me and get all that. We're going to get things one at a time here, okay? That is the issue to deal with. Because once you start to bring up gambling as a reason not to admit somebody to the Hall of Fame based on, I'm not saying based on his character or his personality or whether he's a nice man or not, but just based on how many home runs he hit, how many singles in his career he got, how many outs in his career he got, how many plate appearances in his, because these are all of his records that still hold today. That's what I'm saying. Now, the reverse side of this argument, the other side of the argument then becomes, well, if we are going to hold Pete Rose accountable today for something that we think is bad, which is gambling, and we're going to block him from being in the Hall of Fame because basically that's what Major League Baseball have done by exerting pressure on the baseball writers, okay? Yet, sometime in the very near future, sometime in the next week or 2 weeks or month, you're going to find baseball trying to go to court to get a 1% integrity fee from sports bettors. Yet baseball has done a deal with FanDuel, and they own a piece of FanDuel, which is a daily fantasy sports site, and they have for like 6 years. That is the ultimate in hypocrisy, Nolan Dalla. I'm sorry. If you're going to do that, you need to say, you know what, we're going to induct Pete Rose into the Hall of Fame because, well, it was what he did outside of the field. Now, I will say this, Nolan. I will say this. If I had to make a judgment as to Pete Rose into the Hall of Fame, I would say I'm going to admit Pete Rose into the Hall of Fame as a player. I am not admitting Pete Rose into the Hall of Fame as a manager. Because in point of fact, I actually agree with you that it is the rules that he broke as a manager to be sitting there making bets, even if he was even if he wasn't connected to those games, that is a seriously egregious breach of trust. And that is why I think his managerial records should not count. and they should be always tarnished. But as a player, his records are his records, and that is why he belongs in the Hall of Fame. End of story.
Absolutely. And then how you could hold that, you don't even know what really went on in this guy's thing. You're just saying the gambling. He had to tell one lie to cover up another lie. We've all been there and done that. His pride and his emotion when he got caught doing it and all that. They got nothing. I want him on my team. You know why? Because those guys that had him on his team have 2 or 3 World Series rings. All your nice little boys that follow the records and get their little things and eat their little protein shakes and do nothing, they got no World Series rings, brother. Pete Rose, I want Pete on my team. You can have, Andy of Mayberry on your team because I got World Series rings. You know what you got on your finger? Nothing, pal.
But you know
you
what?
got nothing.
You know what? A lot of us, maybe it's not the rings, Frank.
I'll take the rings.
But I'll tell you what, I can sleep at night.
They can too because he
sure
was
they could,
when
because
they
have
played
no
on his team.
Integrity,
he hustled to first base. He slid into home on his face.
I'm sure
it's not the bottom of a Pinot Noir that's helping you sleep.
People can sleep well at night. I'm sure that's
I'm
true.
talking about playing with Pete Rose.
Well, I'm talking about to you a society where
I want Pete on my team.
I'm concerned that rules
you can
don't
have Andy
matter
Mayberry
anymore in politics and in business and in foreign politics. You know, like what happened to like a man's word is his honor? Excuse me, let me finish. What happens when I sign that piece of paper and I'm pledging something? And I put my name, Nolan Dalla, and I'm saying I agree to follow those
and
rules.
he did.
No, he did because he violated it.
No, when he signed for $100,000 to play for the '74 Cincinnati Reds, he hustled every play to first base.
Hustle.
He slid on his face. He played with scars on him. Everything else.
And when you show yourself, when you show yourself. Because you can't take back the money.
I want him on my team.
You can't take back the rings. You can't take back the glory. The man is ridiculously famous and somewhat wealthy relative to he gambled.
You can have all those little babies on your team
because of baseball. It's not like he's a victim. Are you kidding me? He's a victim. Yeah. He's milked baseball for like all it's worth, and he's made.
Are you
he's
kidding
sitting
me?
And I go to forum shops. He's sitting there like a scumbag. And these
he's
fucking
doing what
idiots
he's got to do.
Will pay $20 for his worthless.
I don't think it's
signature.
worthless.
It's not worthless.
All I know is
$20.
Because you know what? There's millions.
You can
of
have
them out
Mr. Rogers on your team. I'll take Pete
It's like
Rose.
a box of Kentucky Fried Chicken. There's so many of them out there. They're worth nothing after you eat them.
Okay,
wait, I'm not finished yet. No, let me finish my point about Rose. So Rose is there. And the last line of defense, he made the money. He's famous.
He didn't make that much money.
Yeah, whatever he made relative to his day.
No, that was bullshit.
Yeah, I know that. And Babe Ruth didn't make enough money either.
No,
That's
he
irrelevant. He made a lot of money for his day. And so now, what's the last line of defense to correct the situation? Why is Pete Rose? Why is Barry Bonds?
Different,
Why is
all
Roger
different.
Clemens out of it? Because you know what?
Different. One's performance.
Because you know what?
Like
the Hall
Nick
of
says,
Fames, for all of their inconsistencies and hypocrisies, I give the baseball writers and the people who vote on
you're
us some
full
credit
of shit.
because they at least stand
You're
for
full
something.
Of shit.
Because
That baseball
they stand
Hall
for
of Fame
something.
stand for
Thank
what?
you for standing up.
Did you stand for what? Let me tell you. One of them is performance, like Nick says. Now you've cheated in on the field. He didn't cheat on the field.
I know that.
You can have all these little Andy Griffiths and all these little Mayberry boys on your team. I want Pete Rose that for $80,000 hustled to first base on every play. These little creeps right now making $10 million with a little backache with 5 days off. They hit 260. They just
You want O.J. Simpson in your backfield if you're starting a football team?
absolutely,
You
baby.
do.
Give me O.J. on my
Keep
team.
your wife away from him, okay?
I don't care. Give me O.J. on my team, and I'll take Pete Rose. They didn't cheat on the field. They were men.
All right.
They played their asses off. And you're talking about some guy that lied, and now he's signing. He's doing what he's got to do, pal.
Okay. Can I just make this? Can I just make this point? The key to this discussion and the key to coming up to some resolution here, as we need to in the next few minutes or not, is to understand that there are key differences in what we're talking about. In that an individual that runs the entire gamut of their career achievements and their achievements as an individual, those are two separate things. And what we're having to do here, and what we do in sports, because we deal in statistics and numbers and achievements is that we separate those two things, okay? No one says, Steve Jobs wasn't a genius because he was a piece of shit human being. No one says that. Everyone says he was a genius. Whether or not I agree with that is a different matter, but that's what's generally accepted. He was a piece of shit human being. Don't get me wrong. Well, they can sue me later, bastard. Anyway, we need to separate the achievements of the individual versus the character, because if we are unable to separate those two things, you will invite O.J. Simpson over for a family dinner, which is a bad thing to do. However, if you are running some sort of simulation and you want to look at the who did O.J. play for? The Rams, right? And
God!
What's that?
The Buffalo Bills,
The
baby.
Buffalo Bills, yeah, the Buffalo Bills.
Of course,
and you want to look at the achievement of the Buffalo Bills. You're running a computer simulation for their era. You're going to leave O.J. in, of course, because he was an incredible running back. But you're not going to talk about his acting in the Hertz commercials. So the point I'm trying to make here is that we're separating all of these issues. If you're going to separate these issues, as I believe the Hall of Fame should be, if the Baseball Hall of Fame were to say, we enshrine in the Baseball Hall of Fame wonderful people involved in the game of baseball who follow our rules and who do good for society, and who further little kiddies playing in the park playing baseball, well then by all means, I don't believe that Pete Rose should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. But the Baseball Hall of Fame has become a clearinghouse for baseball's achievements on the field as one of its primary drivers. And to exclude those achievements of Pete Rose from the Hall of Fame is a travesty that basically invalidates the Hall of Fame as a repository of those records. Now, that's all I have to say. The only last thing I will add to it is just to reiterate what I said. I am talking specifically about his achievements as a player. I do believe firmly that as a manager of a team, if you are making or betting, number one, you have to set an example for your players because that's part of your job. And number two, if you're gambling or betting or involved in betting on your sport in any way, shape, or form, that is such an egregious violation of trust in your position as a manager that should, in point of fact, we cannot be sure that didn't affect his decisions as a manager. I don't care how what you say. No one can be perfectly sure that, just like you can be sure that maybe he took steroids, maybe he didn't. It puts a question mark over everything. But as a player, for me, there's no question mark over any of Pete Rose's achievements.
Let me tell you something about his decisions as a manager and thus betting on the games.
Okay.
First of all, he never bet against himself. So as a manager that also wanted to win the game on the field and with his bookmaker, you got the very best of his intentions. Okay? Remember, he never bet against himself. He only bet on himself. So he can't make a guy go up there and get 2 hits.
That is not true.
Oh, absolutely. What do you think? He was trying to win on the field and
because if he has action today, Frank, and he wants to win his $5,000 bet,
right,
and he's managing the Reds,
wants to also win the game on the field.
He's going to throw every reliever at the game. And what does that mean? What does that mean for tomorrow's game when the relievers are exhausted?
Care about.
What do you mean you don't care?
Oh, he didn't do all that. Tomorrow? He didn't. He couldn't do all that.
What about the gamblers who are betting on the Reds tomorrow when all the relief staff is
all
burned
I know is
out?
that if I had a bet on the Reds and Pete had a bet on the Reds,
it doesn't matter. It does matter. That's the whole point. It does matter is what I'm trying to tell you. It does matter when he's throwing everything at one game because he's got money on it versus tomorrow's game.
Well,
where he
if I bet the
that
Reds,
matters, sir.
All I know is if I had the Reds that day, I'll take it. But here,
yeah, but if you got the Reds tomorrow, you're screwed.
No,
you're screaming at the screen.
But here's the one thing for sure, okay, Nick? If there was ever a Hall of Shame, I would want Nolan as the commissioner because you're going to spot out all the shameful players.
Wait. And I tell you what, to open up the Hall of Shame, the commencement speech will be given by that very famous former Rams running back, right? OJ. So just OJ will give the opening
USC.
ceremony.
That's close enough. Same thing.
Yeah, USC.
Hey,
exactly
but Brian,
close
let's get Pete. Wouldn't you want this guy to help this guy out with our overnight picks, reduced juice?
Absolutely. Pete needs to start laying 05. That's the first step to recovery.
and get some of our picks. I mean, he needs some of our picks on this thing, and he can even throw in Nick's soccer stuff. That's going to win money.
It's interesting. Lionel Messi has been convicted in a court in Spain of financial crimes.
He has?
Yes. Should that invalidate him from being considered?
No, but what were his financial crimes?
Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You don't know.
Oh, okay, I don't know.
Okay.
I assume it's off.
No, it is. It's all tax related to his money that he got in.
And how many professional athletes have bankruptcy issues?
Right,
that is irrelevant. I agree with that.
And by the way, I point out, it has nothing to do with Lionel Messi. He doesn't do his own finances. It's the people that handled him just did a bad job. The point I'm making is that we can pass judgment on people. We can do this and we can do that, and you can say, short of O.J. Simpson, who killed 2 people, or Ray Caruth, although he's in no Hall of Fame, or any of these guys that we put up on a pedestal. They need to be judged primarily by what they do on the field if we're looking to write a book about statistics. If you're looking to write a book about wonderful and great characters, I would suggest some of the best characters in sports aren't the ones that put up the big numbers. But they're just the great.
Nick,
the guys that get
I am going to tell you guys a story and I want you guys to put this into your judgment filters before you judge people. Okay. My grandfather once told me the greatest story about judging people and everything. There is a guy who is the best vacuum clean salesman in the whole company. Every week he sells the most. He's the best. Walks in on a Monday, Thanksgiving week. And they tell him at the office, hey, by the way, Joe, this week whoever sells the most vacuums is going to win a 25-pound turkey. Wow. He just says, okay, thanks, guys. Naturally, after Wednesday, because, Thanksgiving's Thursday, he's got the most vacuum cleaners sold. They give him a burlap sack with this, congratulations, you won. So on the way home, he's all happy going to Thanksgiving on the subway with his burlap sack. He sees a little Spanish guy with a little tiny white little paper bag. And he says, hey, brother, he says, why are you down? You got your head down. It's Thanksgiving week. He goes, well, I've got 3 kids and a wife, and I went into the city to try to make enough food for our Thanksgiving, and there wasn't quite enough work, so I've only got enough for 2. So he says to the guy, no problem. It's just me and my wife. I'll take yours. You can have my 25-pound turkey. Great thing, right? The next Monday, he walks into the office. When he walks in, everybody's laughing at him. He walks in and goes, why is everybody laughing? What do you, what's the joke? What do you guys laughing? He goes, come on, Joe. I go, no, what? He goes, come on, in that burlap sack, man, we just put a whole bunch of rocks in there, man. Now, to that little guy that he gave the thing, he's a piece of shit. He went home and he got hustled out of his 2 days worth of food. But his intentions. So be really, really slow when you pull the trigger on judgment, because we know that his intentions were pure and good. But to that little guy and everybody that he served on that train, he was a piece of shit that robbed him out of his 2 days worth of food for a box of things. So slow on that trigger, because you don't know what really is going on sometimes.
All right, let me just good story. And before I think we need to wrap up the show. So let me just make give me 1 minute. Brian, you'll get the close, and then we'll go back to Nick, all right? Let me just say something, gentlemen, and I'm going to just grab the microphone. I may have to scream here in a minute. I've been gambling for as long as you have, 25, 30 years. When I make a wager, and I made wagers on things I don't know shit about, whatever sport. I bet events around the world. I couldn't name one player. We've all done that. And I bet so much money and lost a lot of money and won some money. And one thing, whenever I lay my bet down, I call my bookie, I go to whatever site, and wherever I go and I make my bet, I have at least a feeling, or at least I have to have the confidence of knowing that the players are going to play to win, that the players are playing on the square, that the referee is honest, that the manager or the coach is not tanking the game, or he's got a bet on the game and going to use all his relief pitchers today and doesn't give a shit about the game tomorrow so he can win because he's got $5,000 on the bet today, which is like Pete Rose, by the way. I'm using an obvious reference. Italian soccer leagues, I could give you those kind of college basketball scandals. I want, as a gambler, I want integrity and honesty And without that, it all collapses. It's no good. It means nothing. When Terry Donahue, whatever that referee, if I knew that scumbag is refereeing a game, unless I know what side he's on.
He's on the over. He can't control the under.
You just don't want scumbags like that interfering with the game. That's why, as a gambler, we have this reputation, which is very undeserved, as being kind of like low lies or always looking for an angle. I want games played on the square. I want to be able to try to figure out things, honestly. I don't want managers in the dugout on the phone calling his bookie. I don't want referees on the take. I want to try to figure out, and Brian Allen, I'll go to in a second, has got to say that that's the most important thing. Without that,
how about a guy hustling down to first base?
Without that, nothing matters, and we don't even have a show, because if you're talking about everything screwed up and people gambling and corruption and all this, forget about the character issues. If you don't have the gambling on the integrity, the gambling integrity issue on sports, you're fucked, and we got no business sitting here having a show. Brian Allen, I'll give you the last word.
So, Cleveland under 9, minus 05. Pittsburgh over 8.5, even money.
Unless they're juiced.
But
right.
Well, if they are
juiced,
he
said that umpire's an over umpire. Yeah.
No, but so Cleveland under 9, and who's the over? Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh over.
But Nolan, you asked probably, I will say you're absolutely correct, by the way, and I don't disagree with anything that you've just said. Having a game of having sport which we can trust for its integrity is critical, and I completely agree with everything you've said. However, the discussion isn't about whether our sport has integrity or not on the field. The discussion is about should Pete Rose's achievements, which we all agree were earned clean as a whistle. No PEDs, no cheating, no nothing. In fair and square, those achievements were, should they be honored in the Hall of Fame? That's the question. Not, is the sport corrupt? Should we approve of corrupt gambling? Of course not. The question for me is simple. Once Major League Baseball has embraced gambling, which it did about 5 years ago with FanDuel, I'm sorry, any argument they might have about Pete Rose goes out the window. Period. End of story. The man's achievements are the man's achievements. We can argue whether the nastiness, and it was seedy what he did as a manager, okay, should be rewarded by having those records enshrined. I don't think there were that many Bo as a manager, were there?
No.
I mean, I don't think there were any. In fact, I think all of his records were as a player. You got to let him in. Otherwise, the Hall of Fame means nothing. Sorry, that's my last word. But I think we all agree that having a clean game where we can be damn sure those players are playing to win is the single most important thing. Otherwise, I'm not a sport fan in any way, shape, or form.
Very, very well said, Nick. But hey, so we're off that because I agree with you 100%. He cleared it up very good, Brian. But you mentioned Lance Armstrong. Remember, the bicycle guy. A guy had a great idea for a tattoo for him while he was riding his bike. They would have a squirrel going up his leg in a tattoo, and then another squirrel with one nut in his mouth going down the other leg.
All right. On that note, we're going to wrap it up here.
I wanted to just cheer it up at the end, guys.
I've enjoyed the discussion, guys. It's been heated. And of course, I'm right, which is the best way of all.
No.
All right, guys, thanks a lot.
Next week.
We'll be back on the air next week. Hope you enjoyed the show. For me, Nick Geber.
Frank Perez.
So,
Frank
week.
Lopez.
Shoot that.
Still alive.
And I'm Nolan Dalla.
Nolan
I'm
Doula.
having a great time.
Nolan the Doula.
Next week.
Yeah. Be back
So
on
I
the
just
air
want
next
to, one last thing. Nolan, next week is Cinco de Mayo, so make sure you bring the appropriate beverage.
And
excellent.
sombreros.
Real quick, give me a teaser. What are you going to bring, Brian? Real quick, what are you going to bring?
Probably just a Mexican beer for me.
Deal. By the way, give us your Brian special. What's your favorite Mexican beer?
I guess
one you don't have to pay for.
Bohemia, or Deborah Modelo.
Oh my gosh, Negro Modelo is my favorite. I'm going to bring a 6-pack of Negro Modelo, and since you're there and I'm here, I got to drink all 6 over here.
Deal. I'll match you beer for beer.
Well, you want to have a problem. All right, we're going to run. Till next week.
All right.